Cool. Well, Shane and Justin, thanks for joining me today. I think was it 2 weeks ago that we last spoke, or 1 week ago? We met through a mutual friend and named Andrew. He's got his channel Mindgasms, I guess, and we talked about all sorts of stuff. First, we were talking about issues around abortion, and then it moved to souls and higher power and all sorts of things. And today we're meeting again so we can both fill out a survey together, and it looks like both of you have filled one out, and Reed is assisting me in the background to see and compare each other's answers on the survey. Before we begin, first of all, Shane, you want to say hi?
Hello. Good evening. God bless.
Good evening. And Justin, your camera was having issues, but your mic is doing just fine. So
I'm here. Hello. I hope I sound better. Hello, world.
Yes, indeed. All right, cool. So the last time we spoke, we talked about all sorts of things. First of all, before I begin, do you guys have anything you want to say or any general thoughts about our last conversation? What did you think about it overall? Or maybe that's too broad of a question.
To a fault, like, I'm very big on some framing issues. So I did notice that there are certain definitional questions about how you frame your perceptions, and especially words like desirable, good, better. These words really are very loaded. Even in these questions that we're going to engage in today, you do see a reflection of that. So that was what was my main response to that, would be trying to like pin down some of those particular definitional questions, especially because these are some of the first steps one takes when one moves into Christianity, is accepting certain paradigms or certain revelation in these terms. So that was my reflection. It was like, and I don't know whether it was you or Reed who had said that perhaps afterwards even, that it was a very cordial paced, not a lot of talking over each other. So I thought that was very positive.
I agree.
So in terms of first steps, first conversations, just overall positive, and just what would you want if not a bunch of more questions or topics that seem needing to be filled out? How about you, Justin? What would you say if you were forced to?
I thought we had a lot of unfinished business. I like how we kind of went to the basics, like what is truth? So that's a good basic question. Yeah. That's I was kind of thinking about that the last week. I don't even think I have a good answer for you. Mm-hmm. I like the sort of medical ethics. I think, like at first I thought it was a joke, hearing this expression like, what's the word? Aborted souls, don't worry about it, they'll go to heaven. There's nothing sad about that.
We were asking whether or not
that's provocative.
Whether or not aborted fetuses go to heaven. Yeah.
But when that's becoming a bigger topic, because the medical ethics of the abortion is increasing, like the industry. It's not. Anyway, I won't ramble on about it.
No, fine. It gives me a good idea of. It sounds like we aired out a lot of ideas, and we went all the way to bedrock and talked about how to define truth and all sorts of stuff. And that's kind of what I'm aiming to do today, is to get a little bit more specific about certain concepts in epistemology, and then compare them to certain beliefs that we talked about a little bit yesterday. And so what I'd like to do is throw out a couple of different beliefs that we probably agree on, some that we probably disagree on, and then or maybe some beliefs that I think are true or that you think are not true, or vice versa. And then we can compare how we determine that with the survey that we have, that we both had you fill out before the show. So let's dig into it. I guess the topic that we ended up talking about probably the most last time was the concept of a soul, but it was predicated on beliefs in a higher power or a god. So I'm wondering, on a scale between 0 and 100, where 0 is all I have are doubts and questions about this idea, and 100 is all I have is confidence and no questions at all. I absolutely know it's true. Where would you be on a soul? That souls exist, and you can define this however you want.
I mean, you got to proceed with confidence. I don't. I'll go with 9.9. 9.
So on a scale between 0 and 100, that would be 90.
Sure.
Nine's good for me too. If you want to do 1 to 10. Yeah, I'm not super strict on the scale. Okay.
As Shane, I sit here right now, 75 maybe.
Okay.
Maybe that's the wrong answer.
Yeah, and we're just trying to gauge our level of confidence, our personal. What would we attribute our confidence? Like
to me,
let's put it like this.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like Shane's answer of 75. That sounds to me like a confidence where half the time you might have a doubt. Otherwise, 3 out of 4 times you don't have a doubt, but maybe there's something sneaks in your head, and half the time you'll wonder about it. But then that leads you back into the question, I guess that's the thing. When you settle the question 100%, it's like, oh, the question's dead. Don't even talk to me about it. It's still a living, like, controversy issue.
Sure. And so we could probably say like 99% if we're open to continuing questioning something that we think we know is true.
Well, 75, I think, is a good answer. It's not too confident, but it's pretty confident. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like what's your confidence that you're on a call with me right now? 0 to 100. Where would you be?
10 on 10.
That you're talking.
10 on 10 every day.
101. Jesus,
101. Okay.
Jesus came in there and gave me an extra point.
Couldn't be more confident that you're on the line with me right now talking.
No.
So, and compared to that, like that would be like, I would probably give that a 99.9. Like I don't get much higher than that. So compared to that, would soul for you, Justin, would be 90?
It's like a different 90. You know what I mean? It's like a different unit. I don't want to seem too cocky, like I got all the answers. Maybe I back down a little and I go 85%.
Okay.
But I'm staying high.
Okay. Yeah. And then let's see. Okay. And then Shane, looks like maybe is 75 the right place to be?
For soul?
Yeah.
I really get there's a very reductionist or explicit part of my mind, like ever since I was in middle school. I find multiple choice questions very, very hard because I have a hard time separating the definition of the word from the actual answer to the question. So it's like without being able to insert what I'm saying with the word soul, I don't know how to answer it. Like, is it my definition of soul? Is it what I think you mean by definition of soul? Is it what I think people are gonna hear? That's the average person when they read the question's definition of soul. Is it my definition as I would project myself on a grander scale of time? Is it like what I'm thinking about right now vis-a-vis this question? Like these might seem trivial to some people. I think perhaps I'm a little neurotic in this particular regard, but I would say 75 just because there's some of the less material aspects of my faith that I'm still wrestling with. So
that's perfectly reasonable. If I were somebody who'd never heard of a soul, let's say I'm from some completely undiscovered continent or something. However, for some reason I learned English and I speak English, and I'm trying to understand what you're talking about. How would you help me understand what it is?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna have a spectrum of what a soul is, like roughly, like, let's say the far left is like more secular, and the far right is more what I would define as Christian. The far left definition of a soul, i.e., like some non-material essence to the living being, I'd be like 100 on that. If you go to the far right and you go your
A
soul,
non-material essence?
some form of non-material essence or reality to a
Is an
living
idea.
being. Pardon?
I'm just trying to understand what that is. Is an idea non-material essence?
By non-material, I'm trying to capture the lack of measurability or um, direct access to the reality of the thing through the senses or through sense. Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to capture with immaterial. And with what did I say? I said, and with the word essence, I'm trying to capture that there is some substantive reality to the thing. So, is there a substantive, non immediately accessible to your sense is reality to a human being that could be called a soul or is commonly called a soul? 100% yes, I believe that. Does that uh, does that same soul line up with exactly the top 10 Christian preconceptions that are commonly articulated about it? I'm 75.
Okay.
Does that make sense, or is that just too wordy?
It might. I think I'm trying to understand. It is a thing that's not. I'm trying to think of something that does not fit that description. So, like, if is a false idea, in other words, a completely imaginary thing, also non-material essence.
Yeah, I mean, this would kind of relate to some of the questions you asked here. What question
I'm
here?
mostly just trying to figure out what's not in that category of something that's
Well, to come back to some of the earlier framing things, like I would put forward that if you believe in an immaterial realm, okay, so at the most base level, you could acknowledge, let's say, information is hard to account for in a purely material way. You could say that you could talk about, and then let's say at the other far extreme, you could be the most intuitive person, intuiting, sensing realities that you can't access through any way that's verifiable. I would put forward for myself that um, there is a reality to, or an essence in some way to, a lot of things that are otherwise only intuited, sensed. So to answer more your question, even a false belief to some extent as is some sort of budding flower of a reality to it on some scale. It's like the moment you're what do you call it?
So just to be clear, false ideas could maybe be included in this category as well.
Well, I mean, like the fact that it's not raining has a reality to it, right?
Okay.
The fact that people are believing in things that aren't real creates its own reality. It has, like,
I
even
guess
in a pure.
I'm wondering if there wasn't a soul, what would that be? Would that be
that would be Lego world of just pure
Lego
mechanical world. That's what I would say. Like, I'm just thinking here, if I had to, if you were my friend from the island, from that continent, I don't know if I'd be able to like sort of abstractly teach you about the soul or bring that idea up. But from nature, I think it would be about animals. The life in an animal. It'd be about that day you kill a deer and you're watching something's happening to it. So I'd have to bring it back to reality.
Do animals have souls?
Yeah, do animals have souls? That's what I was going to
ask. No, not a soul. No. They have some. No, not the way a man has a soul.
Well, obviously not the way a man has a soul. But but do they have souls? Like, I'm a little fuzzy on this word. Like, I probably
the reason it was in my head because I was trying to think vaguely of like Aristotle. Isn't that how the soul discussion kind of comes up? It's about the living essence in a creature, that it's more than just mechanical. But this is the thing. The word soul now in my life, I think this is what Shane's saying with the framing. The secular definitions of things, there's so much, like the word soul has so many different meanings. But I think for us, we throw it away and we just want to stick to like biblical definitions. So we're kind of, I don't want to argue for the existence of a soul as it's taught in maybe the beautiful state of California. Something.
Just to take a step back, it's like,
or a modern term, it's too polluted. I'd like to go back to 1600s, like argument about soul, kind of more basic.
All right. So I think I have a fairly decent idea of what we mean when we say souls and how confident we are. Last question about souls. Is there anything material about souls at all? Are they in any way material?
Yes.
I want to say yes too, but it's like material at the limit of what's knowable. It's like material.
It's material because there's not these neat lines dividing things, like the slicing and dicing of reality that we do. From a secular perspective, there's shortcuts of like interface constraints and mechanical constraints of our biology, and this is demonstrable without recourse to anything theological or spiritual. And on the other hand, like in a religious a Christian sense, like unity, Christ being inside you, there's a lot of the paradox of multiplicity and unity existing together. Really, there's a lot of warning against drawing these tight lines between things or dividing things arbitrarily. So it's not so for that reason alone, it's you would say that there's some interdependency at minimum, right? But is there could you eventually sooner or later, are you going to put like this under a microscope or on a scale and see like a number go up or down because the soul's entering or exiting? I would probably say no. In that respect, like I don't think you're ever going to pin down with one of the traditional classic senses the soul. So in that sense, I don't think they're material. So
so I'm hearing you say that they have properties of maybe being material, but we will never. You're betting, or you're seeming to be confident that there will be no way for any material aspect of a soul to interact with any measurable process. Is that right? My goal is to understand you, so please correct me if that's not right.
Provisionally considering, like we're talking about something where it's very easy for me to be wrong, I would say that's at first blush that sounds correct to me.
Okay, Justin, do you concur?
Yeah, I can concur. Sure, I can. I'll just add this in my the word soul is a little polluted in my head because I get distracted from a problem in mathematics, which is the problem of constructing so-called souls of spaces. And the idea of the soul is for spaces is it's sort of where the space splits apart. So as a joke, I would tell people like, let's say you're meeting someone and you want to know something about their soul, like their true core identity. like their core identity, you know, not like the easy stuff like their face or whatever. But if you really wanted to know about their identity, you would put them in a crisis. You know, you don't give them, like us, you're not giving us easy questions. You're giving us questions where we're kind of splitting left way, right way. We're not exactly sure. And that has more information in it for you than just a question where we're just sort of obviously yes, obviously no. You know, you're not really getting much information on us. So maybe a soul of our epistemology here, if I could use that word like in the math way, I'm polluting it. Maybe I'm polluting the conversation. But the way I would sort of describe the soul of our epistemology might be those questions where I can't really clearly answer yes or no. Like if you ask me questions where I can't clearly answer yes or no, you're asking kind of sensitive questions that actually reveal much more than if I just give a clear yes or a clear no. So I find so when I think of a person's soul, I'm thinking of something that's like it's almost contradictory about them, but it's the source of everything. Like
would you say that the question of the existence of a soul is a yes or no question? Like, would you agree that it either is the case or isn't the case? And
that might be an issue that we don't. Maybe that is an issue that we don't have a material definition of soul, so we can never clearly detect when it is present or not present. You know, or like Shane's making the point about never being able to measure it. It's just
sure. Like you and I would agree that if there's some sort of like spooky man out there, or if there isn't a thing that's false out there, but we think the thing is out there, we wouldn't be able to detect that it's not there, right? If it's not in a defined place, or if we don't know where to look. Would you agree to that?
Maybe there was a double negation that I think confused me.
Okay. If a thing, I'm trying to keep it abstract and not come up with a specific example. I'm keeping it abstract on purpose. So like, imagine something is false, but somebody thinks, and this is like, it either can be.
Well, I think there don't exist black holes, so I'll take that. I think that's a false belief.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for pulling that example. Like anything that we think is false works. And if you think black holes are false, then that works.
I think they're a major mathematical error. But we won't get into that, but that's just one example. Like that's a common held belief. It's a part of our core like pop culture today. But I think it's totally.
Imagine a time before telescopes or any way to measure anything in space whatsoever other than just looking up. But somebody said that there was black holes and they didn't have any way to. I'm sorry, Shane. What do you have something to say?
You look exhausted.
It's fine. No, go on.
Am I throwing this conversation up? It's supposed to be.
No. It's just the framing issues are just like grating at my soul.
Okay.
Keep going.
Please speak up if my questions are out of line or anything.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. Keep going.
Okay, cool. Imagine though that there was no direct evidence of black hole, but somebody was saying that there was. What would we?
Oh, by the way, another example would be Mendel.
I'm a little derailed by your reaction to that, but what was that?
Another example would be Mendel when he deduced like existence of alleles and the genes. I think he deduced them from like his statistics with the P's, right? But people said there's no evidence for this. So that's an example. I'm sorry, Nathan, I'm throwing you off. I'm going to stick to it. Okay. Yeah, million years ago, a guy says there's black holes. He has no direct evidence.
I guess the question is, would we be warranted confidence that there were black holes?
What do you mean by there are black holes? Like that's the problem.
It's true. It's like there exists something, but it has no positive content. Like, it's just way out like a million years.
I'll give you an example, right? It's like if we all make up that there's the conversation fairy, and the conversation fairy doesn't like it when people talk over each other. And every single time we talk over each other, we start going, "Oh, dang that fairy! She's gonna be mad at me." Okay. And it starts to be a thing where it's like we get a weird feeling like when we're talking over someone, oh yeah, that conversation fairy, right? So the conversation fairy has taken on some form of reality, right? And if I were to immediately go conversation fairy and you stop the behavior right away, there's a reality to this, to the whatever that conversation fairy thing is or isn't, there's some reality to it that we're creating. Okay. So what type of reality it has, whether it's material, immaterial, whether we have evidence for it, whether we could test it or not test it, we could ask all these questions about the conversation fairy. But but there is some way, I think it would be obvious from my example that it is real. So these questions aren't trivial when you start trying to talk about what do you believe or not to believe. It's, I mean, well, in what way, right? Like kids don't believe in the tooth fairy, but it creates a very different reality for every person when they first lose their couple teeth and they think putting that tooth under their pillow is going to have an effect. It's very different than. Do you know what I'm getting at, right?
I kind of do. Although what I'd like to do, since we're nearly like 25 minutes into the conversation, what I'd like to do is try to hurry along at least just a couple more claims and throw them out on the table, and then we can get to the survey. So that way I can better understand different topics. So Shane, you got a manga hat on, and before the show I asked if it was okay if I asked you about whether or not the election was stolen. Where are you on a scale between 0 and 100 about that?
85.
85. That it was stolen.
Yeah.
Okay. And Justin, how about you?
I mean, that I'll just go 100. I mean, 90. Like,
my man.
I'll just say it's tragic. It's dark out here right now, eh? It's a dark time.
Okay.
And I'm not even American. It's horrible.
And alrighty, there we go. 85 and 100.
But these, I want to say we come to these numbers with some evidence, or I mean, we're not just.
Yeah, that's what I want to dig into.
Even your definition of evidence.
Okay, great. And then let's pick some things that I think we would both agree is false, so I can see where you would place a false number on your scale. The Earth is flat. Where would you be on that?
I'm 100% negative.
So 100% negative. Okay.
Yeah. But there is meaning to saying that. I like what Jonathan Pajot says when he says the Earth is flat and the heavens are spherical.
Subjectively, it's 100%. Subjectively, it's 70%, 70 out of 100 flat. Objectively, it's like 0 flat. I'll say that.
And it's spherical.
Spherical.
Yes. It could be hollow, though. It could.
We talked about this like the other week, which is why I bring it up. Only because I'm curious to know, on the same scale, what kind of number you would attribute it to. And I'm hearing you say, if somebody said the Earth was flat, you would have no confidence. That's essentially what I'm hearing.
What confidence would you have in this statement? I am a round earther, Nathan.
If somebody said I am a round earther,
if someone, to what extent would you ascribe the phrase "I am a round earther" to yourself? 0 to 100, 100 being affirmative.
Well, so are you asking my confidence in my own preference, whether or not the Earth is round?
No.
Or are you asking me my confidence that the Earth is round?
No, whether you're comfortable at taking on the label of being a round earther.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Are you? Okay. Yeah.
I will be a martyr to the round earth any day of the week, Nathan. I'll be right beside you there, brother.
Okay. All right. And any other claims that you think I should know, or any other things you want to throw out there that you wouldn't mind putting on the scale? And you can just pick anything you want.
Alien life, existence of alien life. Just to be discovered within, let's say, 500 years? I don't know.
That we will okay, so like, is the claim that there are aliens out there somewhere?
It could even be little mold on a planet. Some sort of is there one fern on one planet way out there.
Sure. Yeah, I would.
You know,
I mean, I would be willing to wager that's probably the
actually
case.
a fern's probably reasonable. That's maybe too reasonable.
Okay. What do you think, Shane? Do you have an opinion on that, or a number to throw out for your confidence in that?
100.
100. Okay. So we believe that's the case.
So now I'd go 1% confident. I'd say I'm basically 1% confident. I don't think there's any aliens out there.
Oh, okay. That's fascinating. So there's like a difference.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So why did you, Shane? I'm curious. Why did you attribute a 1? I also am probably like, I don't know, in that neighborhood of numbers.
What I attribute 100, sorry?
No, I'm in like the lower territory, personally.
For alien life?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's like hypothesis range.
Oh, geez, Louise.
I definitely think that it's something that's plausible.
Funnily enough, I was actually going to ask a question based on another lecture from the same fellow. He just talked about, so in physical reality, if you're looking from like a chemistry, biology, physics type of perspective, especially if you think the laws of physics and chemistry are consistent throughout the universe, there's only like so many solutions to like ways molecules can form, gravity operates the same, et cetera, et cetera. So when you start mapping out how, and then again, they think the universe is kind of uniform. They found some evidence recently that the rate of expansion in different parts varies, but by and large, like the kind of status quo opinion is that any direction you look in the universe, it's roughly the same thing you're seeing. So you have this like infinite pool of the same thing in every direction, which is the same as what's here, all operating under the same laws, all, you know, all the order and entropy acting in the same manner. So I mean, it's like you run the same experiment a zillion times, and you only get our result once. That doesn't make sense.
So Justin, you were at a 1. Could
Right.
you ask Shane a question that would make you believe what he's saying to be at 100? What question would satisfy your 1 to get you at 100 about?
I want to ask him about what kind of experiment does he think is being repeated, or like, see, I find people approach this usually like probability point of view, you know, like, well, you know, we're just, if all those random,
a question you could ask that would get if it had a satisfying answer, would draw you to Shane's number, or high at least on the scale.
Okay, Shane, have you seen any evidence that there's any planet which is, say, 1% as habitable as our planet for humans? In other words, has there been any planets detected which are not total death, i.e. totally filled with noxious gases, and maybe just totally gas planets, or they have no atmosphere? Like most planets, I think, are. I'm just asking them, you know, these so-called, what do they call it? You know, they're looking for blue planets. I don't think they've found.
No, they haven't. But I mean, they're finding as the technology, like there's like 3 or 4 standard ways of detecting objects moving around other stars, and as they keep refining them, like they even in the last couple months, they found planets around Alpha Centauri that are in the quote unquote habitable zone. So what I've witnessed over the last 3 or 4 years is like a trend towards more and more Earth-sized planets, more and more of them inside the habitable zone. I mean, they don't have the spectrometry or whatever it's called that would allow them to actually detect what type of elements are on them. I can't remember the name of the telescope that's supposed to come out in the next decade. I think it's going to have some ability to get some rough idea of what kind of elements are on these planets. If I recall correctly, my memory's not the best for these things. But I mean, like, my intuition from the trends I've seen, I don't think it's just me projecting my desire for there to be aliens on top of it, but I think it is moving towards yeah, this greater increasing probability. So I'm definitely using my intuition to fill in the gap, but I mean, it kind of aligns with the other pieces of evidence that I have for how I think reality is constructed. So,
all right, Shane, do you have a question for Justin that would bring you to a 0 or a 1?
well, Justin, do you think there's something like implicit within God's plan for creation that would have him only make things on Earth that have that are like have had life breathed into them that I'm missing?
I guess I just think the Bible makes it clear that whatever's happening on this planet is the center of God's eye. Like everything's focused on what's happening here. Basically, everything else out there. Okay, hold on. Maybe I'm not answering your question. Yes. Did you think there's something like I'm missing that that would prohibit or prevent God from having breathed life into other creatures?
Or framed the other way, or something that makes you believe that it was only breathed in here for a particular purpose? Because I tend to think that what the Bible excludes or doesn't talk about, it's not necessarily rendering an opinion on it. I think the way Revelation's structured is it's very keen on delineating what it's delineating for the reasons it's delineating them, and not necessarily to pontificate on what that says about completely unrelated frames or topics. If you follow me there, if it wasn't too many.
So great. I feel like we hashed out a lot of claims. We've got 3 on the table, maybe 4. We talked about the existence of a soul. We talked about whether or not the election was stolen, Earth is flat, and also whether or not there's life out in the universe. So that gives me kind of an idea of where you guys are on those positions. So I suppose now's a good time as ever to get to the survey. And I usually like to start with number 19 on the survey. Both of you fill this out beforehand. 19 is, I often investigate beliefs that do not match my own. And it looks like both of you have slightly agree to that. It looks like all of you agree to 19. Looks like you both agree to 20. Thank you for going back and forth, Reed. I'm interested about number 23 here. So it's beneficial to find out when I'm wrong about something. Both of you have slightly agree. If any one of these 4 claims that we talked about today, if it turned out that we were on the wrong side of our confidence scale and we found reliable information that would drag us to the other side, would we want that for ourselves? And let's start with you, Shane, I suppose. Or let's start with you, Shane. If you found out to your satisfaction that the truth was for any one of these things, whether it's flat Earth or soul or life existing out there, would you be okay with being on the other side? Would you want to be on whatever side is true?
Yes, definitely. I don't know why I didn't fully agree with that. I can't remember the logic. I just changed it.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I encourage you, and that's great. It sounds like both of you are comfortable with saying you don't know, and it's beneficial to find out when you're wrong about something. That's awesome. I agree also. 22, I will abandon a belief if I discover reliable information that falsifies it. Okay, so like if we're confident in an idea, though we reliably falsify it, and we discover that our idea isn't the case, is there any idea we would protect from this falsification? Is there any idea that we have in which is there any reason to not be strongly agree to that? I guess. To number 22, I will abandon a belief if I discover reliable information that falsifies it. So this would be to our own satisfaction. Something shows us that this idea isn't the case?
Well, there's some beliefs that don't rely upon reliable information. I think that's why I didn't fully agree. It presupposes, yeah.
I get you. If though, to your satisfaction, there was something that could be reliably falsified, and you saw that it was falsified, would you ever resist shifting your confidence for any one of your beliefs?
Part of me surely would for psychological and energy
Hey man, that's
conservation
really
reasons.
honest of you.
For sure.
I feel like I would probably be resistant to some ideas too.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think, Justin?
Well, first off, like, basically, I don't think you could build anything on a lie. If something's what the point I want to make. Hold on. Like in Boolean logic, I don't like how they represent true or false as just 0 or 1, because it makes it seem as if, like, in a way, you could live your life by lies and live your life by truth. Like, you could just take it or leave it. You know, if it's a 0 or 1, it seems like it makes no difference if it's a 1 or it's a 0. You know, you can just proceed and live the same. But I think there has to be something totally different about truth. Like, and I think Wittgenstein makes this point. Like, if you have a proposition, maybe I repeated this last time. If you have a proposition P, it's a well-formed proposition, then it makes like positive statements, you know, and you can compare it to the world. It either matches or it does not match. There's either some correspondence or not some correspondence. So if it's true, then things are going to correlate in the sentence the way they correlate like in reality when you compare. But the negations of statements, like when something is false, if I say my statement is false, it doesn't really paint a picture anymore. I think Wittgenstein would argue that not P, it doesn't really have any positive elements to it. And I find this happens in math a lot, where they just prove statements. They just prove negative statements all the time, and it just becomes very, very abstract. And
math is one of those things where because I'm hearing you say the truth isn't always black and white. I'm hearing you say things like the truth isn't always like math.
Am I saying that? Oh, am I saying that?
Oh, correct me if I'm not understanding you. My goal is to paraphrase what you're saying.
I want to say it has like a different substance to it. You can build things on it. And that's kind of vague, I guess. That's a kind of metaphor. You can build things on it, but a lie, like, that's the reason why if you're going to be a liar, you have to be a compulsive liar. You're going to have to lie about a million things, because there's always things that are uncovering that lie. But if you just stick to the truth, you don't have to invent things, you know, to support the truth. You can have that confidence that the truth is the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
There's
so I think we're probably going to get
something essentially
to this
different about
sort of discussion once we get to number 1. Foremost, though, I just wanted to see how comfortable you were with adjusting about what's true. I think that's what 19 through 20.
I never answer your questions.
24 does. That's okay. We'll get around to it. I think it was so 23. This one's interesting because this was an old survey somebody else made, and myself and a couple other street epistemologists kind of like changed some of the wording on this and number 23 was one that we changed. The more unusual the statement, the stronger the evidence needs to be. And so there was a difference here. So it's fun because we're all three on some different place on the spectrum. So I'm in the strong agree category. And it looks like, is it Shane that's in the neutral? And then I think Justin is in the strongly disagree category.
I'm in the neutral.
Yes.
You're in the neutral. Yeah. So, so Justin, if you strongly disagree, why did you disagree? The more unusual the statement, the stronger the evidence needs to be.
I want to keep in mind, I know something happens where if you present somebody with some evidence, some potentially falsifying evidence, I know the mind can like just rationalize and rationalize it over and over. Like people do not want to admit they're wrong. And even me, you know, I mean, if you, let's say, so when I was asking Shane about evidence for human life, okay, he points to, well, they are discovering a few more Goldilocks planets. You know, so I'll say, okay, let me look into that. Let me get back to you. Meaning, I'm not going to just give up right away, right? I'm going to kind of test it and be a little, like, scrutinize it a little, and then maybe even come up with some more rationalizations. Like that's the human weakness, you know. We don't want to. We had an opinion, you know. We're not just going to surrender it if somebody sneezes at it. You know.
Let me ask you this: when you first hear something, you have no information about. So I'm keeping this abstract. If you hear a claim for the very first time that you have no basis of understanding, however, somebody says it confidently to you, and it's really unusual to you, is your starting point to believe them with high degree of confidence?
I don't know. Not necessarily. You know what I'll do? I'll try to remember as accurately as I can what he said, the person said.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'll be curious about it and look into it a little. But I don't know if that answers it, but I don't care how confident he is. You know what happened is I went to school and I realized all like the PhDs and professors are total idiots. So that's like my background. Okay. I have like just total zero confidence in the elite academics. Like that's a problem with specialization.
Let's say in this instance, you don't know this person at all. You know nothing about this person. Somebody just says something really unusual to you. It's a claim about our shared reality.
I'm at a gas station and some guy with no teeth tells me he was abducted by aliens when he was younger.
Yeah. Okay.
I might buy him a drink and just ask him some more like questions. I don't know. It is personal. I want to say it's very subjective, and I don't have like a strict operating procedure, you know, for how to deal with new information.
Okay, I'll throw out 3 claims and just throw out number. This is lightning round. Claim number 1, and then these aren't hypotheticals; these are true. Okay.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me where you are on the scale.
Okay.
I personally own a car. Nathan owns a car.
Yeah, I believe.
Where are you on the scale of confidence for that?
Sure, 80. Why not?
Sure. Okay. Would you give it a number?
80.
80. Own a car. Yeah. Okay.
I got to go 50-50. Like you could own a car, not own a car. I don't know. There's nothing obstructing you from owning a car. Like I think you could own a car. You have all the opportunities to own a car. Although I don't know. How old are you?
So you'd be 50. That's cool. Lightning round. All right. Next one. I own 3 cars.
No, less likely.
3 cars. Okay. You want to give it a number?
40.
Okay.
I give it 10%.
Yeah, I know. Right. Budget 10's better.
Because you're wearing that hoodie. That's why.
Yeah. No guy owns 3 cars never wore that hoodie.
3 cars. Okay. Yeah. I own 3 cars, and one of them is invisible.
Well, no, I don't believe you.
Okay. Would you be like, what numbers would you give that?
0, because I don't think there exist any invisible objects. Yeah.
Okay. Was one of these statements more unusual than the other ones? And if so, does that mean would you judge your confidence off of hearing these? I see you laughing, Shane, but I'm sincere.
I love it.
With number 23, would we judge off of the claim alone and nothing else our confidence on a scale when we first hear something? And if so, is the unusual nature of the claim justification enough to be somewhere else on our scale?
I mean, I think I catch your point here.
Well, I went in the middle for Slicey because I really needed to see this statement act itself out in reality to decide where I was going to fall on it. So the reason I was laughing is I'm like watching, your action plan for acting this out. It's like, oh well, I've made an increasingly unusual statement, and your confidence has dropped. So, does that lead you to believe that perhaps you'd require more evidence for that confidence number to have gone up? Yeah, I've got more unusual. And then,
Reed, can we look at the survey again?
and how would that correspond to the answer you gave earlier? Is there perhaps an incongruity there that I'm detecting
You're
that
funny.
you brought yourself into? Oh, okay. So no, it's good. It's good.
Sorry, I don't mean to have like a pretentious tone or anything.
No. I meant that in a friendly kind of like, it's clever. I like what you're doing. I went in the middle for this exact reason, and
I walked right into the trap, though. That's fine.
Did anyone want to change your answer? If you do, go ahead and do so now.
I guess from the get-go, I did feel like something about this kind of led me to believe it was going to be turned around on me in a weird way. Like it was going to be trapped.
Number 21. I just want to reiterate the reason why I start with this section is because this is about how comfortable we are with changing our minds, and sometimes it's like, but I see here there's a strong agree to number 21, and I am there.
You know
as
what?
well.
You know what's good? I'm gonna go full agree with the last one.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to at any point change any of your answers.
Think about it,
Jay. Yeah, the last one is 24. That one's really interesting. In all the times I've ever done this survey, I've only had one person disagree to the last one. It was a very weird talk.
J-Bomb.
Well, the last one's like tautological because I'm fallible. So of course it's absolutely certain that it's possible that I'm wrong.
Right. Justin, what's more unusual than the statement unusual? I am the literal Son of God?
Nothing.
And what is stronger evidence than resurrecting yourself from the dead? Boom. Fully agree.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I feel like we are, just to glance at this at the very end, we both agree it's possible that some of our beliefs are not true. That's 24. Great. And it looks like we're generally in agreement with 21. It is beneficial to find out when I'm wrong about something. And I'm with you there too. Any questions on this?
Well, let me say 21. Maybe we should say more. Sure. It's beneficial. Like at the beginning, Shane was commenting on like last time, we were too much framing about what's desirable, what's good, what's better, the comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for some people, 21, I mean, I know people, it would totally destroy their whole personality, their ego, if they found out they were wrong about something,
right.
Let's say some unknown social, political affiliations, let's say, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're actually interested in, like, I'd say I believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God because I just want to live. Like at the very, I just want to save my skin. Like I'm convinced that if you don't believe that, you're just going to be obliterated.
So if you didn't believe that anymore, would you find that?
Well, that'd be my future. No, that would be my end. My end would be an end of, like in the future. My future end would be back to dust.
Imagine for a moment you were at a 0 for the claim of a higher power in general. What would be different for you?
What would be different?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole...
Imagine
what would be different. Everything would be different.
Uh-huh.
I can't even think of what that would be. That used to be me. That's like that's a pathetic creature. So I would just say we'd have to go back in time to see what a younger Justin was. That you'd see there's a difference.
I wonder if you had the same amount of like grace, or if you were a little bit more fiery. Like
I was a selfish jerk.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Desperate for what's the word?
Yeah, I could see you being a lot more. I don't even know how to say it, but yeah, the selfishness would be a lot more palpable, I think. I would suspect.
Would you have no reason to be selfless?
No, that's
if you
secular
didn't
crap.
believe it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, this is where, like, if I was guiding the line of questioning, if I had made up my survey, um, uh, I would be hammering into, like, how can you make any claims about better, worse, anything that's not descriptive. I don't understand how you, Nathan, or Reed can say anything that's not descriptive from your belief set. Like, I
Anything
don't
that's
know.
not descriptive?
Yeah, like, I don't know how you make any kind of normative claim, because I don't know what you ground your definition of better or worse in. Like, for instance, in a nutshell, Sam Harris says, hey, there's this vague concept that I can't define or measure or otherwise can't be inconsistent about, that I'm going to call human flourishing or human welfare. And I'm going to claim that I want to support things that move in that direction. Why that is the case, I can't say. It's self-evident that that's
So
desirable.
I agree with you that will make a fantastic discussion. And maybe what we could do is do that for the next time.
Yes.
Though
Yes.
I think for today, we should probably stick to the 4 ideas that we had and maybe the survey as well. So let's go to the top of the survey. Are you okay with that, Shane? Or do you have any questions for me before we move on to the next thing?
No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Cool. Groovy, man. Thanks. All right. So it looks like both of you gave the same answer to number 1. Number 1 is really just trying to establish what the truth means to us before we get into a discussion about what is true or what to consider true. And so let's see here. Yeah, thank you, Reed. A statement is true when it corresponds to reality. Is there any reason to be hesitant on that? Or if we are hesitant, what would be a better way to describe what's true or the truth or how to consider something true?
Statement is true when it persists in embodied reality, is how I'd want to say it.
When it persists in embodied reality. Okay. How is that different than corresponding?
Corresponding puts this locus on some implied agent that is assessing the correspondence between the statement and reality. And it's putting a lot that who's defining whether it corresponds or not, and how one would determine that is doing a lot of work in generating the truth. So that's whereas statement is true when it persists. What did I say? An embodied reality is actually saying reality is determining what's true, not my ability to decide it corresponds.
Okay. All right, Justin, do you have?
Well, I think what Shane is making the point there that that the statement, basically, I think there has to be a human subject that makes a statement, and so the statement is true when it corresponds to the subject's reality. I think maybe Shane's trying to the reality there is not necessarily like just in the mind, abstract in the subject, but we want to make it a statement about like physical reality. Is that what you're trying to make, Shane? Like, I guess the issue is I could agree with this statement or not agree, depending on what we say with the reality.
Well, it depends what you mean by corresponds. Like, I just like the idea of a lot of things a lot of things that are even ridiculous have some measure of truth to them. It's as they collide with reality over time that reveals to what extent they're true or to what extent they're ultimately extinct or not true. And that's the way I look at things, because depending on how one manifests one's own generative capacity, and depending on what God wills, a lot of things can come into reality that weren't in reality when they were initially stated. So it's the persistence in an embodied reality.
So help me understand. This is the old street epistemology trope, but I have Tic Tacs.
Yes.
And if I say the number of Tic Tacs in here is even, how is this? So I'm hearing you say a statement is true when it corresponds with the subject's reality. Is that another way to phrase it?
I think Reed was trying to summarize what we were saying.
Yeah, and I'm reading back.
Justin said how it corresponds to the subject reality. I said how it persists in an embodied reality.
Because I want to make the point. Sorry.
I'm just repeating what I heard. So it persists in an embodied reality.
So count them out.
In what way?
Count them out, and then tell me how many there are, and we'll see how true it is.
Okay, so it exists in embodied reality. Okay, so it sounds like we are in agreement that a thing that's false would be something that's not embodying physical reality, a statement that doesn't embody. Is that right, Shane?
Yes. Okay. So, like, for instance,
I'm just trying to get the opposite of what it is.
Yeah. So, for instance, like the manifestation of the Holy Spirits throughout time in the form of saints has shown the persistent truth of the reality of Jesus Christ, because we've seen the embodiment of the Holy Spirit through the body of Christ, the church, the saints, over time reveal the truth of his reality, right? So that would be an example of how in the physical realm we've seen the truth of his resurrections and glory. Yeah.
So just to be clear, on whether or not life exists outside in the universe, outside of Earth, that was another one of our claims, right? That we would call that statement false if it wasn't embodied, if the description wasn't embodied in reality in some way.
Yes, exactly. So to go back to what I said to Justin is, like, I see like a directional arrow metaphorically, a directional arrow of the evidence and breadcrumbs of what's being discovered that's moving towards something that I eventually will think will point to something.
So I'm cool with these definitions. We're just trying to get whether or not we understand each other on it. And I think I'm ready to move on to the next one. Number 2.
But even
we all share this.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Justin.
Go
sorry,
ahead. Nathan. Like,
is there anything to add to that? It's really important that we agree on number 1. And I feel like we do. We're just using different words, maybe.
I think I'm making a little bit of a stink that a proposition, I think, has no, like, there has to be a human subject that interprets that proposition. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So even your statement, even your statement about the number of Tic Tacs being odd or even, like the odd or even, that's kind of an abstract kind of number thing, arithmetic. Like, we could agree a number's even if it's divisible by 2 or something. But when Shane, I think, is getting to the persistent, it has to be a persistent embodied reality. Back to your Tic Tac, we would want to say that every time you count those Tic Tacs, it's always going to be even. Like, it's not just good enough if you just count it once and it's even.
Well,
it's a statement about what happens every time you measure that pack of Tic Tacs. It's like a statement that's going to hold for all time. That pack.
Well, it's even slipperier than that, right? Because, like, how many Tic Tacs are in that thing? It's like, for instance, how many votes were cast?
Would you agree that there is a number?
You have to count it.
Well, that's the thing. You have. It's like it's Schrodinger's cat, right? It's like, well, how many votes were cast? All of a sudden, the definition of a cast vote and how many there are or aren't goes into question, right? And then some set of the population might question, well, were certain votes found under a table? Were those votes cast or not cast? You know, like, so, but then we pull them out from under a table on security footage, and maybe we look into it, maybe we don't, right? You know, maybe while you're counting the Tic Tacs, you know, one falls away. Do you notice it? Do you not notice it? So if you don't notice that one fell away and all of a sudden it flipped from odd to even, was it always odd or did it become even? What was the truth before you didn't notice that one tic tac that disappeared in your counting process?
Okay, so I'm hearing you say, yeah, and I agree with all that. Was it one number and did it turn into another number? And I guess I'm just trying to figure out whether or not we agree that there is an answer given a certain set in time.
Yes.
Like before I open this box to eat a Tic Tac, there is a number right now that is accurate. And
yes.
And there's lots of numbers that are inaccurate too.
Yes. Principle, yes. And principle, yes. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. And the only reason why we say that is because there's a ton of numbers that are inaccurate that we know are not accurate. And just to be clear, so we're all on the same page, we agree that we can misinterpret the number, and our idea of what's true is just the opposite of that. Would you agree?
In principle, yes.
The opposite of misinterpreting the number.
In principle, absolutely, yes.
All right, cool. All right. Number 2, we all share the same reality and only interpret it differently.
What did I answer?
I had one there as a slightly agree and another answer that was slightly disagree.
I was just slightly agree.
Feel free to switch it up now if you want.
I'm going to stick with that.
Who disagreed?
I hate to be so disagreeable,
tell me more.
But I swear that's my whole
shtick.
That's the only it's the only way I get anywhere. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Or it's
okay. Well,
honestly, it's very productive. I'll tell you that. If you just nod your head and say yes to everything.
We all share the same reality and only interpret it differently. How about this? Let's see that word reality.
Yeah.
Let's say the three of us share this Zoom call, or I guess this this discussion. We're online right now talking to each other. We're just interpreting this discussion differently.
I think it's the word share that's turning me off. It's like, anyway. Yeah,
go on.
Well,
tell me more. Usually people have a gripe with the word reality, and that's usually what I bump up against a lot.
Yeah, I think that's going on here when I say I disagree, because
well done, Reed.
Just our dictionaries are different. So I think in that sense, like our propositions are different.
And okay, do we disagree in the definition of StreamYard chat, do you think?
No, we're good here. Like in this little setting, because we've been talking and we've been finding that some common terms there. It takes some effort, you know what I mean? Like Nathan's constantly checking in to make sure we are using the same words, you know, like in a coherent. So I think what's saying is
understanding these words the same.
I guess I'm saying I disagree because most people's views are incoherent, mutually incoherent. They're not in common, and they definitely interpret it differently.
If we change this word reality to the universe, we all share the same universe.
Sure, I'm with you.
And interpret it differently. Would that be easier to agree with?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Strongly agree, even.
Great. What do you think, Shane? Do you think we're sharing the same universe and only interpreting it differently?
Yes, that one I go up to strongly. You switch the word to word universe. Yeah.
Awesome. Feel free to switch up your answers at any time. Number 3, truth depends on the opinions and beliefs of people. I have one.
I got thrown off because that's a truth with a capital T. But I don't think you mean that one.
Right.
No, he doesn't mean that one, dude.
Is what's true ever dependent on what anyone thinks?
Is what true small t?
Sure.
50%.
It's like, are you asking us, does the majority consensus depend on the opinions and beliefs of people? No, you're not asking us that.
I don't think he's asking.
Let me ask a different question. Is it possible for everyone to agree that something is true and for everyone to be wrong or mistaken?
Yes. Sadly, yes. That's
Yes.
the human fallibility.
But on the flip side, the more people agreeing about something does tend towards there being more truth there.
It tends in some instances.
Okay.
People believing in things starts to generate a reality around the thing that's being believed in. Even if it's completely false, when one person believes it, by the time 100 people believe it, there might not be the truth they think they're believing in being created, but there is a truth being created there. So there's a causal effect in reality from people believing in something that you might decide that might be false. 1 million people believing in a false thing creates a causal reality from that belief that has a truth to it, that enables there to be some truth in that belief. Like it's not
So are you saying right now that if everyone changed their mind, we all were in the negative territory for a flat Earth when we were talking about beliefs earlier? Are you saying that if 50% of the population or more changed their mind and all believed the Earth was flat, would that change what's true?
I'm saying if on January 7th, 100% of the American population believed and nothing had changed previous except this one thing. If on that day 100% of people believed the election had been stolen, yeah, that would change things, regardless of what merits there were or weren't, and with perfect information on the 6th. If on the 7th, 100%.
Do you agree, Justin?
I mean, I could agree to that. Like what I'm just thinking of is, I don't want to sound totally crazy about going back to like black holes and the physics side. That's just kind of on my mind lately.
What you know, be like Hollywood. Every movie involves an actor or a director. Your stories can involve physicists.
Okay. People find it totally implausible that Einstein could have been mistaken. They find it like just impossible. They just find it totally impossible that physics could have been on the wrong track for 100 years. You know, since Einstein's like 19.
What do you think about number 3 here, though?
Okay, I'm sorry. You got to keep me.
Does the truth depend on what people think? If everyone changed their minds on tomorrow about
I want to say no. No, it doesn't.
Is what's true going to change?
Isn't that what the opposite of what you said, though? What did Justin say?
It is like that, eh? Yeah.
No,
the real truth. The real truth.
You fully disagree with the statement, though, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I fully disagree. Truth depends on the opinions. Maybe because I'm being loose in my mind with the definition of truth this year. I keep thinking in this.
What's your final answer then? We're on. Can you change your answer in the survey?
Okay, truth depends on the opinions.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
You disagree with the statement. You
strongly disagree. It has no dependence. It's totally independent of their opinions and beliefs.
Okay, so me and you, yes, me and you are different on this. I agree with the statement.
Okay.
More than I disagree.
Okay, and that's because you believe, Shane, that if everyone changed their mind about something tomorrow, then that would change what's true. Is that right? Correct me if that's not right.
Yeah, I would just slightly like to change the phrasing. It's like people's belief in things begins to change what's true. That statement is perfect.
Oh, my beliefs have a causal correlation to what's true?
It has a causal effect on reality. People's beliefs have a causal effect on reality, which begins the process of changing what is true and what's not true.
So this is just a weird question, but it's tying back to one of the statements we made earlier today about a higher power. If everyone tomorrow stopped believing in a higher power, let's say the correct answer is that there is a higher power right now. But everyone just changed their mind and stopped believing, would there no longer be a higher power, or would that have any effect on the higher power?
Would. What would end up happening is, like, Jesus talks about certain cities he would go to, and there wasn't enough belief there for him to work his good works, like curing and healing. So if everyone turns away from God, which is the same as saying they turn away from death, then yes, God's life-giving good influence recedes and bad and death expand. So in that way, God's truth in reality, small t truth in reality, would recede. The level of death and non-existence would rise, and the light would start to go out. You know, so that's what would.
And I don't want to spend too much more time on this because I do want to make sure that we get through the survey. Though, can you just give me a quick synopsis as to why you think this is the case?
I think it's just a descriptive. It's a tautology from the way I view reality in a descriptive sense. Like that's what the words mean. Like I don't know.
Oh, it's what the word true means?
Yes, it's just what the word means. Like,
okay,
I view reality.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We talked about truth before as embodied reality, like whether or not the statement in question is embodied.
Is that right? The persistence of embodiment, right? So if I start to have a belief in something, that's going to change.
Would that change would that change the embodied nature of a higher power if we changed our mind?
It would change the way that concept or entity persists in an embodied reality. So my belief in God is like, for instance, the beginning of the Lord's Prayer: "May His will be done. May earth be on heaven as on earth." Right? It's like you're not asking for that statement to be true or false. You're asking for a change in reality moving forward. Right? Okay. You're asking for a certain course of events to come from your belief. So
does the embodied number of Tic Tacs change? And this will be like one of my final questions.
Well, it does. It does. It's like when you count it, you have a belief that you didn't drop one of those Tic Tacs while you counted it, right?
Yeah. Let's for the sake of argument, let's say we miscounted, and so we had reason to believe they were even when in fact they were odd. Would our belief that they were even change the embodied nature of their oddness?
Well, okay, so maybe I'll rephrase your question. If we have a perfect machine to measure objectivity, does it change? Does the perfect objective reading of things change based on my truth value instantaneously? No, absolutely not. So if we had recourse to a perfect counting mechanism of said phenomena, just in and of itself, my believing that the perfect counting device should read a different number in and of itself would not change it. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm not saying that you can just will an objective fact to change. What I'm saying is that. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask if Justin had anything to add or a question to ask before we move on to the next one, or if there was.
Well, I think what I'm hearing Shane's, I think it's consistent. What is the case depends in some respect on people's actions. So, like, our statement propositions about like eternal things obviously don't depend on people's opinions or actions. But like statements about the price of gold, spot price of gold tomorrow. Obviously, does that make sense? I feel like maybe that's what Shane's saying is like, what is the case in our world? What we're going to see in this world obviously depends on not just us. You know, it is dependent on the people around us. So I think, when we're Nathan, I think the truth there, that way you're asking the question, like truth depends on the opinions and beliefs of people. I think maybe that's like,
I think
maybe that's kind of too abstract truth, but there's other truth, like more kind of basic empirical truths, obviously depends on the state of the world, which depends on people's decisions, opinions, beliefs, actions, etc. Is that kind of a fair middle ground there? Or like maybe that's where we're getting, maybe that's what we're tripping over?
Well, I think what I'd like to do is just think about what you had said and consider it as we move forward. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'm open to it. Otherwise, I'm ready to move to number 4.
No problem.
Cool. People create words and define their meaning. And I'm usually shocked. I'm not used to seeing a lot of disagrees to number 4. Is there anything other than people that create words and define what they mean?
No, maybe I meant I strongly maybe I kind of agree or disagree. It's the world. Like, we don't just shape words with our eyes closed.
Like, if you and I had a different understanding of what truth means, that might be problematic for a discussion. Though, do people generally have their own concepts for words independently of others?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And do people create words? Like, we might not know for certain exactly like who invented, or if anyone like worked together to collaborate to invent language or whatever. It probably just like slowly came about over time.
Well,
Though,
look how
is there any reason to believe that something other than people has created words and defined what they mean? Like, any reason not to be strongly agree?
Do you mean people as a group or people as a person?
Good question. I'm just looking for any reason to disagree to this statement.
You can go first, Justin.
I want to say something like, okay, I want to run my mouth. There's, I have to sit in the dark for a bit to think of a good way to answer this. But I want to say that we don't just create words and have a language that comes up out of ourselves. It has to be related empirically to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we can make words, but their meaning, I think, is defined. Like, the words are just trying to capture something about the word. Like, the word is just a convenient label for something, or it's something.
Yeah. Remember with number, sorry to interrupt, but do you remember with number 2? I had the sense that we were using different definitions for some of the words, so we switched some of the words, right? With reality, I switched it to universe to convey the intent of that statement. Would you agree that that's all that really matters, is like our shared understanding for words and what they mean in order to understand one another, so we're not confused? Should our goal with words be to have a shared understanding for them when we use words?
Well, almost by definition, that's the purpose of words, right? Like words,
Okay.
Words are pointers that people use to try to point towards the same thing at the same time. That's almost like de facto the purpose of it.
Is there any reason to think that anything other than people create words or define what they mean?
Well, yes. For instance, it's like if I say that has an odd number of Tic Tacs,
mm-hmm.
and then you lay them on the table and we count them and we say, okay, it has an odd number. And then the next words out of my mouth are, no, it has an even number. And you're like, why? For the exact same reasons. And you're like, are you serious? Yes, I am. Nope, it's back to even. Nope, it's now odd. And I just snap my fingers and that keeps changing whether it's odd or even, right? Like, this is what you were kind of getting at.
Who in this thought experiment is not a person who's using words?
Can I define myself as a man right now and then define that as what I am? And then I'm
looking for what's not a man or a person.
No, I just mean to say,
I'm looking for any reason to because I'm open. I mean, I'm open to hearing a reason to not fully agree to number 4.
Because
I'm just looking for any.
Okay, because so can I define the word red to mean this hat, but then now I define red to not be this color, and now I define red to not be a color. It's now the way it's this motion. So this is now red. Can I Can I just do
So
that
I
whenever I
agree
want?
that could be complicated if our goal was to understand what the color red is. Though, is that getting at number 4? Is there any
Well, I mean,
reason to not
can
agree
I
to number
can I
4?
define the meaning? So can the three of us decide that this is now purple? Can we define this as purple?
If we all agreed that it was purple,
We
would
have
we
that
be
power?
people creating a new word for purple
I don't think we can do that.
or a new word for red?
I don't think that would persist in embodied reality. I think if we went
That wouldn't
around, the
persist.
three of us, and we had a plan to say this cap is purple, I do not think that would persist in embodied reality. I think that would be.
Do you think that
that'd be
words?
selected against? That would be selected against, and it would go extinct.
Yeah. What do you
It
think,
would-
Justin?
Its creative life would be short.
I swear, I read this and sometimes I think it could be true or not be true. So I'm not sure what the point, why I don't totally commit to it. People create words and define their meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, this is our whole issue in our world today. Is like words are just being defined and created, but we're losing meaning. You know, that's the thing. It's being polluted, and all meaning is.
Have you guys ever? Have you guys ever seen Rick and Morty?
Yeah,
do you know about do you know about the plumbus?
Plumbus.
The plumbus.
How do you make a plumbus?
I don't remember.
You put the schleem on the dinglebop. I don't know. It's this whole thing. It's hilarious. Anyway, they just made up a word. Okay. Well, I feel like
Look at statement 1. A statement is true when it corresponds to reality. People create words and define their meanings. So that means I can create a word and define its meaning, even if it doesn't correspond to reality. So like there's a fundamental tension between statement 1 and statement 4. You can't agree with both. They contradict each other.
Thank you, Reed. With the plumbus. Okay.
1 and 4 contradict.
If we took, if I start speaking Spanish, and you didn't understand any of the language I was speaking, would the words I'm saying be absent of meaning?
In that context, yes. Mostly they would be, yes.
Yeah, and I would agree relatively to somebody who doesn't speak that language, right? Yeah. Though to others that do speak that language, does it carry meaning? Yes,
it would.
So it sounds like, and I agree, that our mutual understanding of words and how they correspond to reality is what matters. Would you agree to that?
Yes, like 80-90%, yes.
And the words could also not correspond to reality, and they would just be false in a different language. Do you agree to that? And that'll be my last thing, and we can move on.
I didn't follow the last question.
We can make a statement in a different language, and it could not correspond to reality. It could be false, in other words, in a different language.
It could. Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay. Cool. Number 5. A statement is true if everyone agrees.
I'm sure I strongly disagreed.
You did.
Yeah. And does that mean, Shane, did you want to change your answer after going over some of these, or do you want to stay where you are? What do you think?
I think it's more true than not true that a statement is true if everyone agrees. The word true there, that like true is like the Paul.
If everyone disagreed to that statement, would it no longer be true?
Well, now you've created a paradox, and you revealed the fundamental limitation of explicit state propositional knowledge. Like it's the word true is one of these words that fudges. And see this. So this is the problem. Like these or in tech speak, there's edge cases with some of these statements, right? So So like I said earlier,
if you disagreed to number 5, would it still be a paradox?
If I disagreed Sorry. Statement is true if everyone agrees.
Yeah,
Statement
if that statement were false.
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Okay.
Because everybody could wait. Statement is true if everyone agrees. We all disagree with it. So yeah, everybody could agree with a statement which could be true, and everybody could agree with a statement that's false. That's fine. And then if you disagree with this, just the status of the truth of the statement is not affected by people agreeing with it or not. So
What do you think,
I say it does.
Justin, you strongly disagree. Is there a question that you could ask that would make you agree? That you could ask maybe Shane, since you disagree? Or are you there?
Let me think.
Sure, no problem. I just can't see you, so take your time though.
It's like, what do you mean by agrees there? Are you saying a statement is true if everyone sort of can validate it being true? Like are you saying a statement is true if everyone who understands the statement can sort of verify that statement, like it correlates to the facts as they see it? Is that what you mean?
I think did we lose you there for a second there, Shane?
I clicked the wrong button. Just keep going.
Oh, okay. Did you hear his question?
I thought he was asking a question of you. When I left, he was asking you a question, not me.
Yeah, maybe to clarify, I was trying to clarify, Nathan, maybe about what the agreement is. What is everyone agreeing to there? The truthhood.
Let's say everyone has a common understanding of certain words, like reality and universe or something like that. And everyone agrees to the statement, the earth is flat. Does that mean that statement is true because everyone thinks it?
Well, no.
Or can that statement still be false despite everyone agreeing?
I believe people fall for the big lie. I'll just throw that out there. So I find it totally plausible that this majority consensus.
Yeah, the question
totally
is
mistaken.
essentially what I'm asking is if everyone agreed in a big lie, would that lie be true?
Okay, but it's the problem is this definition of truth you're using is a 0 or 1 definition of truth. There is some truth conveyed by everybody believing in the world being flat. So maybe the truth isn't that the world is in fact a flat, like a surface that extends, level in every direction with an implied bottom.
We could also just say non-spherical, but I guess I'm trying to.
It might not.
I think you get the gist of what I'm saying, though.
The truth of the statement might not be that the Earth is non-spherical. The truth of the statement might be that there's a credibility gap in the way authorities are currently manifesting their monopoly on what is correct in reality, or there might be a confidence gap. The truth of that statement might be the confidence gap in how experts are lording over their expert knowledge, and as an FU to that prerogative they have to tell the unwashed masses what's true and not true. We're going to just stick it to you and say we can believe in the most absurd thing possible. So maybe that's how it's manifesting its truth, right? So it's
if everyone agrees, does that automatically make it true?
It makes
about anything.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Or we can move on to another one, but I basically am just asking, like, I'm wondering
by your definitions of number 5, the answer is fully disagree. Okay, by the way you would define those words, it's fully disagree. It is.
Okay. Even if we were talking about embodied truth or embodied, whether or not our statements are embodying in a thing.
Well,
I'm trying to use your definition of truth.
Yeah, well,
I'm trying.
Well, it's by my definition of that word. Yes, there. Okay, it's what you. There's some persistent embodied effect to everybody agreeing with something. It might not be the explicit nature of the statement, but there's more truth inside a statement if everybody agrees with it than there was beforehand. The truth value of that statement isn't, it changes. I don't, but I mean, this comes full back to my worldview. So it's like these questions, if I go into your worldview and re-answer these questions from how I think you define these words, my answers would be very different. Like this one, like if I guess how you would define these words, then I'll disagree here. I'll just redo this front section based on how I think you define these words. Statement is true when it corresponds to reality. That's fully agree, obviously. Second one, we all share the same reality, only interpret it differently. That would be fully agree. What else here? The third one, truth depends on the opinions of belief people. Fully disagree. If all members of society share a belief, they're justified to hold that belief. Fully disagree. These would be the correct, quote unquote, right answers. Believe something that is false. Sorry, no, wrong one. Let's go up here. People create. Fully agree. Let's see.
What are you doing, Shane? You're spoofing what you think.
I'm just saying, based on what I think, how I think Nathan would define these words. This is if I took what I think his definitions are. This is what I think the answers would be.
I'm not sure I even know what Nathan, how Nathan would answer this question. He doesn't
from his implicit frame, like the framing he has. Strong belief, even without action, can change external reality. No, right, Nathan? Those are basically your answers, right? Am I right?
Yeah, for the first section.
Well, that's
number six is interesting because I think the way we interpret the statement might change the answer. I'm actually curious to move on to number 6, how you interpret number 6. Strong belief, even without action, can change external reality. So how do you, because I want to go how you interpret these things, and then I want to understand how you use these words. And I'm not trying to push you necessarily in any direction. I'm trying to understand why you answer where you do, either in the strong or weak agree or disagree category. And this is just a framework, and I'm not the arbiter of truth, nor am I like the Pope of truth or whatever. I'm just trying to get common understanding for these words. And if the words don't have a common understanding, then I'm willing to shift my perspective on some of these words. Number 6, I could be honestly where either in the middle or in the disagree camp. It depends on how the person's interpreting number 6. How would I mean, I guess I don't want to necessarily pick anybody, so like either Justin or Shane, go ahead. But do you guys what do you guys think number 6 is trying to say? If somebody were to tell us strong belief even without action can change external reality, how would you interpret what they intend on meaning when they say that?
That makes me think of that kind of solipsism view. Like, I'm going to be resurrected if I just believe I'm going to be resurrected, or I'm going to be, what's that thing? Reincarnated. Just because kind of in my mind, that seems to be like emotionally the proper morality or something. So that's what I'm hearing you see there. I mean, I don't think it's true, because I think external reality has like a fixed, it's not necessarily what you want it to be. I don't have that view that, you can just change the world by your attitude or whatever.
Yeah, and I interpret that similarly. Yeah, I think that if somebody were to walk up to me and say what this says, I think that they would be implying essentially kind of what you're suggesting. I have a bit more to add, but what do you think, Shane?
I realize that for each of these questions, I've been thinking of like a situation where I could apply this sentence to, and I can this one in particular, I can find situations I can apply this sentence that would fit, where I think it would or wouldn't change external reality.
Mm-hmm.
Such as
What do you
like,
think that?
so
What
for
do you think
instance,
it's?
so
Yeah.
for instance, strong belief in like in the gulags, right? Strong faith that they can't punish me, even if all I do is just remain faithful to that and don't necessarily. I mean, I guess there's an action that accompanies that, but that belief alone, if you believe Solzhenitsyn, had a direct effect on communism, right? Whereas um, some loser in his basement believing the world isn't giving him his due and he's not doing anything about it is, I don't think that's going to change external reality. So I could think of strong beliefs without action that do or don't change external reality. So am I missing? Am I misinterpreting the question by framing it that way, or?
Yeah, I don't know. It just, I think it's in the eye of the reader, or in the. It
So
just
that's why I
depends.
was. That's why
I
I was in
think
the middle.
personally, I believe that the spirit of number 6 is trying to get at whether or not belief alone, without action, causes an action of some sort in the external world that you and I share, like the physical world.
It just
Like,
shows how cheap belief is, like kind of abstractly. It's like, you don't really believe. I think that goes back to the soul question. Like, if you really want to
though
know,
I wouldn't go so far as to say that our actions aren't important or that our beliefs aren't directly correlated to our actions, and our actions matter. So
I define
this
your
is
belief.
just trying to get at.
I define belief as what you act out.
Yeah,
so that's
what I'm
that's
trying
the
to
problem
say.
I have there. If you don't act, this is a big disagreement between Justin and I. No, Justin. Sorry, Andrew.
Nathan.
It's
Andrew.
no,
Yeah.
Andrew. It's like he says, I don't believe in God, and I'm like, well, you act like you believe in God. So you can say you don't believe in God all you like, but that's not how you act. So it's like, and then he gets very offended by that, right? Like really, really offended by that. So it's like this distinction between belief and action. Like even earlier when I said that you believe in God, so you act differently inside the. Sorry, like I don't see, like if your beliefs don't affect your actions, that I don't see how there's any weight to your beliefs. So what is a strong
Maybe the
belief without an
importance
action?
of the belief matters a little less, it sounds like, if they don't have any consequences at all on your actions or the external world, is what I'm hearing you say.
Well,
is that right?
So is that a belief or is that just a statement? I believe, redheaded men can disappear when I'm not around. Like, like if I'm schizophrenic and I actually start freaking out about the redheads I'm not keeping track of that are like going invisible, they're gonna like sneak up on me and attack me, then yeah, maybe I actually believe that. But see, but then I'm acting that way. I'm like, crap, that redhead's out of sight. Has he gone into invisible mode? Is he sneaking up on me?
Okay. So let's try to ring this in a little bit. Imagine for a moment somebody believes in like the law of attraction or The Secret or something like that. Would that be something that counts for number 6? Like if somebody believes that they're going to make money if they think about money all the time, would that be something that falls into the category of number 6, do you think? Or do you think it doesn't fall under that category?
They're going to act differently. That belief's going to be
even
matched.
If they don't act on it, if they only think it and don't act on it.
But okay, well, so now you've replaced the word. Okay, strong thoughts without action don't change reality.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I would even then.
Is there a difference between belief and thoughts?
Well, belief is something you hold, right? Like the people say, do you hold that belief? Holding's an action in and of itself, right? Okay. So like it's not just semantics. It's like the imagery around belief is something you hold. Like hold. Do you hold? Are you going to hold on to that belief? It's like that's an active thing you're doing. It's not so to like so. I would say it's like it's an oxymoron to say a strong belief without action. I think that's an oxymoronic statement. For instance.
Cool. Hey, Reed, how are we on time? Do you think we will be able to burn through the last here in a little bit? I'm realizing how long we're going. I have plenty of time, so long as you two have time. I want to make sure that we're. Oh, hopefully he didn't. He maybe he's getting another pizza again, since he said he was gonna. He had a pizza last time. There he is.
Go as long as you want, however long you want to go. It's fine with me.
Okay, cool. Are you guys fine with finishing up the survey, or did you want to pick this up at a later day?
No, I'm all super excited. I'm good. As long as my excitement isn't agitating you guys.
No, I think so, and this has been fun. What do you think, Justin? You want to keep going?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking at the comments here. I think there's some reasonable questions.
Yeah, maybe we could just take a brief. I feel bad for Robert because he's taking time here.
I haven't even looked at any of the comments yet.
No, I just
maybe
saw that.
Reed can pick a few here.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, if a statement is totally incomprehensible to everyone, could it nonetheless be true?
Yes.
It's a good question.
I said no. I said because that's a trick question. I would just say if you can't have a proposition that's unintelligible.
Shane seems to be making it.
Well, what about when Jesus? What about when Jesus was constantly talking about who he was, and the disciples didn't get it yet?
Well, he was speaking clearly. At least I feel like Robert's making the point. If the statement, well, maybe Robert's not making that point. If the statement was totally incomprehensible to everyone, could it nonetheless be true? Yes, if the statement's sort of out of time and the people who hear that statement don't really know the future, I guess it could be true. It could be a prediction of,
it has to be possible.
The way I would answer that personally is so long as there's one person who understands what it is that they're saying. If it's incomprehensible to everyone,
what if it's comprehensible?
Then it'd be gazorp or goobledygop, right?
I wonder if he means more than that than just like a sort of nonsense statement,
like a dinglebop.
And that's
all right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Is there another comment that we could look at, or maybe another question from the audience? Because that'd be.
Well, what about this one asking Shane? Shane seems to be making an ontological claim about truth.
Mm-hmm.
I think Shane knows what that word means. I don't know what ontological means. I forget sometimes.
Ontology is like I always like to define it, and I'd be interested to see if the street epistemologists want to correct me. Ontology to me is the objects that you populate your epistemology with. That's how I think of ontology.
Sure, and I think it's the philosophy of being, right? I'm not really an ontological minded person, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's so tableness, and it's understanding what makes a thing a thing.
Well, exactly, right. So and then this kind of comes back to the question at the time that we were talking about, was question number 3. Truth depends on the opinions and beliefs of people. It's like even once you define your epistemology, or you think you've defined it, like operationalizing it. Once you start operationalizing it or trying to apply it, that's where you're going to bump into the realm of ontology.
Okay.
So
unless there's another question from the audience, we can move on to the next one on the survey.
Well, let's get your best Rudy's. Sorry. Just that last one. Rudy's asking, how do I act out the Big Bang, or act out that Mars had water at some point? Or is it possible to believe something that has no effect on your actions? So I think this goes, we should have defined what it means to believe on something.
Well, you can act. I would put forward
Great job, buddy.
I would put forward people act out the Big Bang by thinking that science has all the answers to how to define reality. So I think I think from what I heard of Nathan and Reed talking last week, they're kind of acting out the Big Bang because they're acting out this idea that you can use evidence and the scientific method to define what reality is. And that's nested inside this belief of what the Big Bang is, which is the best claim about the origin of reality that we can test with evidence and therefore, operationalize as our belief,
Correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned that you don't really believe anything that you don't act out. Is that right? Is that because when we were talking about number 6, that's kind of what you were saying? And therefore, people who don't believe in a God, for example, were nonetheless believers, provided they acted as if there were a God. Was that kind of your line of argument that you were mentioning earlier?
Yes. Now, to be fair, that it proves that assumes you are self-aware enough to know what you act out, right? So, like, I can claim I believe in Christianity. Then, but perhaps if I really took an honest look at myself and looked at the way I've acted in the last year and the way I've been treating people, maybe the correct assessment is, no, Shane, you really don't believe. You seem to believe in selfishness and in convenience and in the trappings of saying that out loud. But actually, what you seem to believe in is stress reduction, enrichment, and convenience. So there's a level of self-awareness there that happens, right? So you can. Yeah, that makes sense.
What is it? Can you tell the difference between whether or not I believe in a Big Bang, right, by how I act out?
I think the way you conducted yourself corresponds to how do you say it? I think the statement you believe in the Big Bang corresponds to the reality of how you conducted yourself and described your positions over the course of my time talking to you, and therefore I would consider that statement to be true.
Okay.
What I find interesting about the Big Bang question is, it's like, what's the problem? For me, the Big Bang is you take your local observations of what you have today and you try to extrapolate to something, what is it, 50 billion years ago? Some huge number? So when you accept the Big Bang, you kind of accept this this possibility that you can go backwards in time, that you have the ability to deduce events that are totally non-observable. That's my problem with the Big Bang. I feel like that's what Big Bang cosmology.
Is it ever this will be my last question on this topic, and then we can move on to the next thing. But is there any belief I can have and not act on it?
I want to say no, that you just don't really have that belief. It's just a empty belief. Yeah, belief.
Those would be your thoughts.
Belief, I just want to say, means you rely on something, you have a confidence in something, you take a risk based on a belief, I think. So that's what I would want to say. Like, I have a belief about the future of the economy, so I put some money in gold and silver. And to me, that separates it from to me, that's how I prove that I have that belief, or that's that like positive evidence that I have that belief. It did have an effect on me. Otherwise, I don't really have that belief. It's just, I guess it's like Shane saying, it's a thought. It's like even worse than a thought. It's just I don't even know.
Well, I'm ready to move on down the line.
Sorry, yeah,
we'll wrap up this survey here. Okay, number 7. This is under the section, how does belief work? Some beliefs should never be questioned. And it looks like, by and large, we agree that we disagree to this. There's some hesitancy for one of you. Are there some, just throwing out a question out there, are there any beliefs we should never question?
Go ahead, question it. No, it's not going to fall down if you question it.
Some beliefs that should never be questioned. Why did I slightly disagree? I think only reason I didn't put fully disagree is I think at some point there's the return on questioning things goes down to zero. Like at some point you have to make a decision. Like for instance, either believe it's a good idea to, um, try to escape this bad situation by going this direction, and questioning that belief is going to take away from the limited effort I have to dedicate to this escape plan. And the best chance of this escape plan working is by not questioning that belief anymore. So I think there's a certain point. Well, no, it's at a certain point, it's like, because this is the problem with, it comes back to the same thing we were talking about a second ago. It's like, if you define belief as something you act out, then it's like sometimes once you've begun acting the thing out, questioning it might not actually have much value.
Okay. So there might be like some circumstance in which it would be detrimental to achieving our goal to be questioning anything. All right. I think we by and large agree, and we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Number 8, someone can be certain of something is true, yet still be mistaken. Are we both in strong agreement? All of us in strong agreement to that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think there's any difference. And just before I move on to the next one, real quick, it looks like we all strongly agree to this one. I'm also in the strong agree category. Though, does this also cover things like personal experience? Could someone be certain of a personal experience and be mistaken?
It's called mushrooms.
Okay. Someone can be certain of something is true on personal experience and or testimony and still be mistaken about how they're attributing their experience to their conclusion. And we all agree, just to make sure.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 9. A test that cannot identify a failure is a valid test. Now, we talked about this a little bit in our last talk. And before we started streaming today, we brought that up a little bit.
It's an interesting question. Here? I find it a very interesting question. I put myself back in neutral there.
Yeah. Okay, you're back in neutral. What do you think, Shane?
I think it breaks the definition. I think that's the definition of a test.
A definition of a test is something that can identify a pass and fail.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah. I think that's a tautology. That's the correct way to say it. Yeah.
Okay.
I've started to think that maybe it's impossible for any test to do that. No, that a test will have, and it's the difference between the content of a proposition P and the content of its negation. Mm-hmm. They're just something different. So what's an example? Like every experiment either shows something is the case or not the case, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it's, you could have concretely for your audience, I think I'm always thinking of this Michelson-Morley experiment, okay, which, like when you look into special relativity, you can read whole books about the experimental foundations of special relativity. Because people say to me, like, oh, it's not even possible that there could be a mistake in the special relativity because there have been so many tests that verify it.
Yeah. Okay. And so, just to be clear, if we're trying to test something, we have to, very least, imagine.
I heard the Tic Tacs. You just picked them up, right?
They're in my hand.
I heard them off screen.
So, well, okay. Since I'm holding them, if my claim was these Tic Tacs will fall when I let go, what would be? I mean, would we agree that a failure for that test is it doing anything but falling? Like behaving in some different way, like either floating or doing some other thing?
Oh, I want to say yes.
Is that what makes the test valid? Is that it could do something, or at least we could demonstrate that this could fall? and imagine it doing a different thing. Is that what makes it valid?
Is there something even like another tautology there? Like it's either going to fall or it's not going to fall. Like there are no other possibilities, right?
Yeah, and I guess I'm wondering if we don't have this ability to identify a test failing, is it even a test? Like I guess that's really the question.
So now I think it's true, I guess, your statement. I don't know why I get so mixed up with it. It's
you mean you think that the number 9
now
is,
I'm strongly in agreement.
You disagree.
No, now I
You're
strongly
in agreement.
agree. No way, a test. I'm not trying to
mean
be
you're in disagreement?
I'm in whatever you guys are agreeing with. A test that cannot identify a failure. Oh no, I strongly
test has
disagree.
to be able to identify a failure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So a test, in order to be a test, needs to have both pass and fail. And if it only has pass, or we can only identify a test passing, it might not be a test. Is that right? And then we can move on to the next one. I think we all agree.
Yeah, I can't think of an example, but that doesn't hold.
I'm sure we could ask some questions about the PCR test. What does that prove or not prove? But that's a whole other thing.
It's probably not a valid test. It's the word valid that's tripping you up, Justin.
Yeah. All right. Number 10. If all members of a society share a belief, they are justified to hold that belief. And okay, one neutral, and then the others strongly disagree. I'm also in the disagree camp, but who was it?
I mean, I said agree, but I can change my answer.
Oh, Shane is the one that disagreed. So Shane, you disagreed to that statement. What question could you ask Justin that would make you more neutral?
Sorry. Okay, if all members.
No, so it's hard.
No, yeah.
My brain's getting soggy too.
If all members of society share a belief, they're justified to hold that belief. So So I had to think of a question I could ask Justin, of which the answer could change my opinion.
That would change your view. Yeah.
Holy jumps. Okay, if all members of society share a belief, they are justified to hold that belief. I don't think so. Okay. All members of, by definition, all members of a Muslim society share the belief that Muhammad was a prophet. How could this possibly be justified? They hold that belief. Go.
Well, I think again, they're always arguing about what the words mean. In a way, I can't blame them to hold that belief. Like, is that what you mean by justified? Like, they're justified.
Ooh, that's a good point.
In a way, it's reasonable. Of course, it's reasonable to think that. I mean, you don't want
justified.
You have to be unreasonable, right, to disagree a little bit. Like that's the thing.
That's true. Define justified.
I got a question that might be kind of like the one that you asked, Shane, but a little refined. If all members of our society converted to being Muslim, they went from Christians to being Muslims, let's say over the course of a month, like it was really quick. And let's say the same number of Christians now are Muslim in America.
Okay.
Would you and I be justified to change our minds? Like, should we, if all members of our society change their mind, would we be justified, or would they be more justified in believing what they're believing because of?
No, they wouldn't.
The numbers.
See, because, and the way I look at, like, to go back to my previous definition, if you held the belief that Jesus Christ wasn't your savior, over time you would not persist in reality, and then therefore you would not be justified because it would not serve you. So that's why I would literally be heretical and a hypocrite if I answered this question in any other way. Because then I looked it up on Google. The theological definition of justified is declared or made righteous in the sight of God. So it's like I don't get to decide.
What dictionary is that?
That's
how they define justified?
Definitions from Oxford Language. Number 1, having done for or marked by a good or legitimate reason.
Yeah.
That's
usually what I'm familiar with.
Yeah. But then you got to keep in mind this comes back to the framing and foundation stuff we'll get into next time. It's like, well, where does the foundation of reason and rightness and good and correct come from? So for you, I don't know where that comes from in your mind.
So I guess this is asking, let's change the word justified here. If all members of a society share a belief, then they have good reason to hold that belief.
I'd say they have reasonable
They have reason.
Yeah.
They have reason.
Sure. Is it a good one, though? Is it?
It could be good.
Mm-hmm.
They have reason. That's what I said. I literally said this earlier. I said there is a truth. There is if everybody holds a belief in something, even if it's false, there is a truth to it. I said.
So
it might not be a good truth.
All these points on the survey are different ways to go up the scale or go down the scale on a scale of confidence. And earlier in our discussion, we had like 4 different things that we laid out on the table. And let's say we're at a 90 on our confidence scale on anything. It really doesn't matter. Though the only reason we find ourselves at 90 is because all members of the society around us are saying it's true. If all members of a society share this belief, is that a justified reason to be at a 90 on our scale ever? If it's only number 10 and not any other thing, and we're leaning entirely on number 10 to reach 90. Essentially, the question is, should we ever do that?
Okay, but you're saying that but if it's the only reason, that implies that it contradicts other things. Like it doesn't match up with what physics would say.
More like, does this reason stand on its own is the question.
Leaving the other ones as unknowns?
Yeah, like if I'm at a 6, let's say I'm at a 40 for a belief, but I recognize that everyone around me believes it. So my 40 puts me at a 90. It jumps me like 50.
Your 40 should probably, if your 40
should it bump me up at all in any amount?
It should. If you're betting, it's like, if you 20 times, if you chose to have your belief level go up because everybody believed it, sure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times out of 20, that could be like walking directly into a pit and falling on stakes. But at least 15 times out of 20, going with the crowd is probably, especially if that belief's been around a while, probably more likely to be correct than not, or have utility than not, I would put forward.
Okay. All right, Justin, what do you think?
I mean, I'm thinking of the case of like, I go on this website, Math Overflow, to like answer kind of math questions. And for example, everybody believes in gravitational waves.
Okay.
Most mathematicians, because they read about it in books. Okay, like all the standard books from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah. They all talk about gravity waves. But nobody wants to review like the foundations. Nobody wants to read like the original arguments, like the basis for it. They don't want to hear about the basis. For them, they think it's been settled. Because I mean, their teacher wrote a thesis on gravity waves under a great, Princeton professor who wrote a book on gravity waves, who learned from Germany in some laboratory on gravity waves. And like his PhD grandfather sat next to Einstein on gravity waves. So of course they can't all be wrong.
What do you think about number 10? And I want to move on to the next one.
Oh, sorry.
Much time on it.
What do I think about number 10? It's like, do they have a good reason? No, they don't have a good reason. They have a reason.
Okay.
I think it can be a crap reason.
Sure.
And it's not a reason
Right.
in itself, although usually
Cool.
it is. And then we
All
can't, like.
Let's move on to the next one.
Sorry,
Number
I'm
11. It's all good. we're getting at that point. I think we're 2 hours in, so I'll try to wrap it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Believing something that is false feels just like believing something that is true. This one's one of my
Feels,
favorite
yes.
ones.
Strongly agree. Right.
It's number 11. Okay.
But that's feeling. As you said, it feels.
Wait, I'm the one who says yes strongly, right? And you disagree with it fully, Justin? Or is it the other way around?
Someone disagrees with it.
I know, I agree strongly. It feels the same.
Okay.
Oh no, I disagree with that.
You can. Oh,
yeah, I did.
Gravity waves
you did
originate
before
with,
in our last discussion. Do you still think that way?
Sorry.
If you believe something is true, though that thing isn't true, can you tell it's not true based on how you feel about it? Or I guess that's not even the right question. The right question is,
if your heart is pure, if you've purified yourself and grounded yourself well, and you start acting out something that is false, which is what I believe the word belief means, like you will feel it. Like if you're coming upon, yes, if you're properly aligned in reality and you're sober, reflective, to use religious terms, if the Holy Spirit is operating properly inside you, then yes, you will feel that the belief is false. At the same time, I could think of another situation where, yes, if you started to get prideful, or you're lacking time or lacking self-reflection, then yes, something that is false could feel the exact same as true. So I could think of conditions where you could do where this could be 100% true and 100% false for 11.
My only last question on this one would be, can you ever imagine a time in which you were wrong about something and your feelings didn't warn you in time?
Yeah, plenty of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the next one. 12. Feelings are a reliable way to discover truth. I got one neutral and one disagree. Yeah.
So I'm getting distracted by the comments. I'll stay focused.
Sure, it is.
Oh, is that more comment?
About gravity waves, but it's a whole thing. I got to stay focused. It's okay.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's enjoyable. That's great. As if they Googled gravity waves. Oh wow, we're ready to go.
Sorry, back to you, Nathan. Okay.
What would your answer be to this, Nathan? Let me hear. Here, let me. I bet you I can guess your answer. You're going to be over here. Let me see. I can guess Nathan's answers. Pleading for false. Yeah. I'm going to just change all of these to what Nathan's answers would be. I disagree.
So my thoughts on feelings is it depends on like, is the question whether or not it's cold? Well, then my feelings might be helpful. I can stick my hand out the window and tell as a way to measure. Though if it is about something in the external world that you and I share, let's say it's about whether or not Vishnu exists, I don't think that I could use my feelings to determine that reliably.
What if
feelings?
So there are no phenomenon that reveal their validity to you through the way you feel about them?
Like temperature is a phenomenon that I can understand.
Love might be too, as well, right?
I could also be wrong about whether or not I'm falling for somebody, though. Yeah,
Was there a better measure?
I'm sure that I would consult my feelings when deciding whether or not, you know, I want to be more romantically involved with somebody or whatever. Though when it comes to like fact claims, right, like true or false claims, which is kind of what I'm trying to. Those are the things that were pushed out on the table today. Like whether or not the election was stolen, I don't think I could use my feelings to determine that.
Okay.
And I think that if I let my feelings get involved, they may give me bias. And so from my perspective, it's actually probably the thing to be most cautious of when determining the truth of something, especially if I have preconceived notions about my own political identity. I might let that interfere with my better judgment. And so I would be cautious about allowing my feelings to intervene in building my confidence in a belief about, you know, whether or not an election was stolen, or I would be more reliant on external sources of evidence for that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So do you believe that like what pieces of evidence are examined would change what determination of facts you're going to come to? Like if I'm trying to determine what's factually true, if I grabbed data sets at random, would I reach the same conclusion each time, or like how important is the data set I select to determining the facts of something? Factual truth of something.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So, for instance, if I wanted to determine, is it factual that how many Tic Tacs are in the thing? How important is what data set I use to determine that?
How important is the data set that you use to determine? Well, it depends on how important the claim is. I mean, if the claim meant a lot,
if I counted the amount of stars in the sky to determine how many Tic Tacs are in that, it seems like the data. Like I need.
Our methods matter. To answer your question, I'd say our methods matter, and reliable methods, to me, would matter more than methods which are known not to be that reliable. Okay. So if I have a history of counting accurately, then I could rely more on my ability to count the number of Tic Tacs in the air.
If methods are very important, then perhaps what's even more important than the method is your way of selecting methods. Would that make sense?
My way of selecting methods?
Well, if methods are very important, okay, then perhaps there's good methods and bad methods. So what might be even more important than the exact method I use any one time would be my ability to select a good method in the first place. Right?
Yeah. Okay. And are feelings a good method for determining like the number of Tic Tacs?
Well, what I was going to get at is it's like what determines what data set you use. Like, for instance, you were saying earlier, well, I don't want to use my feelings, but I would put forward, this is going to be the intro to our next conversation, let's say, but I would put forward that your feelings probably have a great impact. And this is actually what Haidt would talk about too. Your feelings have a great impact on what data sets, what you're going to attach valence to, what you're going to look to derive your conclusion, what evidence you will look at and won't look at. Your feelings are going to govern this a lot more necessarily than necessarily the empirical data. And then you go forward too, is if you'd look from an evolutionary standpoint, you would say if there's a relationship between determining the truth and survival, if that relationship holds at all, and human beings tend to use feelings to pick their data sets, okay, it's almost like evolution would have honed us to have feelings that attune us to the right data sets to pay attention to, insofar as what we pay attention to helps us actually interact with reality properly, right? So you get into a lot of interesting discussions. So at prima facie, all I'm trying to say is at first blush, it would seem like the feelings are less reliable. I would put forward that you perhaps rely upon feelings a lot more than you think you do. Jonathan Haidt would be able to show that in a scientific way, which would actually meet your first criteria of what you should look to for truth. And thirdly, there might be a larger role for things you can't explicate, like feelings, having more wisdom, or even though you can't explain why, There's very rational reasons to believe they could be a lot more attuned than you might think they are at first pass. Not to be contrarian, but these are all. This comes back to some of our framing issues as well that I would put forward. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm ready to move on to the next one. Anybody have anything else to say before we do?
Well, we have a whole other section.
Yep, this is the last one. And honestly, some of these are really quick, but some take a little bit more time. Number 13, believing something without evidence is admirable.
I love how you just throw in all these new words like admirable, feelings. You're just always spicing it up with the new, like, jeez, admirable.
I know. It's great.
Do you personally have any beliefs that you hold without any evidence?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I have beliefs that I hold without your definition of evidence, which is what we just talked about.
Yeah.
What is my definition of evidence?
You don't think feelings are a reliable form of evidence. You do when it's cold outside. You just
Are feelings evidence?
Well, it's a data point.
Sure. Okay. I don't think I necessarily disagree with that.
It's a data point. It's certainly a data point.
I just don't know. I think it's heavily context dependent. Like feelings are heavily context dependent personally. So like if we're talking about the cold, then I think that's fine. We could use feelings for that. If we're talking about whether or not the election was stolen, our feelings are probably going to get in the way. Any kind of bias that we might have, or our feelings are going to blind us to our biases.
What about the wisdom of crowds?
Say that? Say what?
What about the wisdom of crowds? When the
wisdom of crowds?
Well, you get 100 people to walk up and they intuit how many beans are in the bean jar, and you add up a bunch of intuitions that are.
And you can get an average. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can get an average. That's actually pretty cool. I actually remember that in like psych class forever ago.
Okay, well.
I mean, there are certain things that I think feelings would be great for. Though, yeah, I think that we're not so different about this than you think.
No. Yeah. I mean, you have to have some definition of evidence you have to use. I don't think like, yeah, man, I got no idea why I think this is true. That's like, but I'm going for it, buddy. Yeah, you're gonna drown. That water's cold. You shouldn't believe it's warm without evidence.
I think we understand each other on 13 and what constitutes evidence for the most part. Number 14, without an explanation for something, any answer is better than no answer. Looks like we all just strongly disagree? Looks like we do. So I've got no questions. Number
it's just
15.
Pollution. I think the short answer is it's just pollution. You can't give an answer if it doesn't have any. No answer is better there because you.
Yeah, if we don't know something,
that's your answer. You have no answer.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's okay to say I don't know, and just if we have no evidence for something, to just be low on our scale of confidence.
Absolutely.
So, does anyone disagree? Okay. Number 15. It is okay to accept something as true because it is comforting. So this one's trying to get at whether or not a thing's comfortability should ever be used as a reason to believe it.
It happens all the time, but it's not a good reason. It's hard to. What did our dear leader Al Gore say? The inconvenient truth. Remember?
Sure. Is it ever okay to believe something is true on the grounds that it brings us comfort?
In the short term, it's okay, but eventually it'll kill you.
Okay. That's a good sentiment. I agree with that for the most part. Like, maybe it could be beneficial in the short term, give us some benefits in the short term, but in the long term, yeah, Okay.
Yeah, if you're really busy and like you have a lot of really big problems, it might be okay to believe your wife isn't cheating on you.
Mhm.
For the next couple days. Maybe while you sort your bank account out with a clear head, get yourself sorted out. Maybe while you hire a private investigator, then you could start letting that doubt into your mind and deal with the repercussions once you properly set yourself up.
Okay. Number 16. I give all claims the benefit of the doubt when I first encounter them. Looks like we both are kind of in the right. So this one we kind of went over already when I did the 3 examples a while back. Like I have a car, I have 3 cars, I have an invisible car, and I think we have a understanding of where each other are at on this, and just we slightly disagree. It looks like I'm neutral, but honestly, this one I'm really flexible with. Do you have any questions for me on that one? Because I can move on to the next one.
Do you have a car, or what is your deal?
I do.
Nice. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Is it visible or invisible?
Yes. All right, number 17. Someone is justified in their beliefs until they are proven wrong.
Proven wrong. I hate that word. Ugh. Proven
If
wrong.
you can't prove somebody wrong, are they justified because of it?
What did I say? Someone is justified in their beliefs until they are proven wrong.
What?
Disagree.
I think I pressed disagree so much because I just disagree to the whole question. That's the whole thing.
Okay. Someone is justified in their beliefs until they are proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You could be justified in your belief after you're proven wrong, before you're proven wrong. Yeah, I disagree. There's all sorts of exceptions to that statement.
Yeah, earlier when we talked about number 9, we were discussing whether or not a test is a valid test if it can't identify a failure. And I believe we agreed that it wouldn't be a valid test. And if someone were high on their scale of confidence in a belief, and they believed it, despite the fact that no one could ever prove them wrong, like they could never have a test that could show it's not the case, even hypothetically, would that person who's believing in this thing be stuck? In other words, if they're at a high degree of confidence and there's no way to ever demonstrate to them that it's not the case, if it weren't the case, would they ever find out if they were using 17 here to believe it?
Yeah. I'm going to say it depends on what you're talking about. Justification comes from God, not from evidence. So it's not like if God's decided you're justified in your belief, there's the proving wrong thing. It doesn't really make sense. It breaks down. In my mind.
I mean, what would be more reasonable? You, Nathan, would you say someone is justified in their beliefs when they are proven right? Is that what you're looking for? Like, yeah, someone's justified in their beliefs when they have some positive evidence to.
When we do something that could put them at risk for being proven wrong, and we fail to do that. So, like,
is Thunderbird trying to make a point here to correct me? No, they must prove themselves before they are justified.
Yeah.
Who's that commenting to?
I think it's a general statement.
I do have trouble with sorry to interrupt, Shane. Sorry.
No, go ahead. My bad.
Yeah, again, it's the word justified, eh? Like from the Bible viewpoint, that word is so heavy. That's a really heavy-duty word there. Someone is justified.
Yeah, are they marked by good? Are they marked by legitimate reasons?
Like,
until the moment somebody proves them wrong.
We don't get to, like,
if
the problem is you don't get to, like, the criteria for determining justification is not something that I decided. So like that's already, it's like God decides what's justified, not me. So no matter what I do, calculate on this earth doesn't change what's justified or not.
God,
God is the judge. God is the judge. He justifies. You know.
So are you saying that your beliefs are determined by God?
Whether or not my beliefs are justified is ultimately going to be determined by God. Yes.
Oh. If somebody hasn't found a justifiable reason to believe in a thing, is it their fault then?
Not necessarily, no. Depends on how hard they acted. What I would say is I mean to hop into a secular mind frame, someone is justified in their beliefs until they are proven wrong. Yes, I could agree with that in like secular definition of these words. But even then, that's weak sauce. Like, no. In and of itself,
this is the only reason. So each one of these principles is imagining all the other principles are being ignored for the time being.
Of course, it'd be reductionist, right?
Yeah, we're looking at each one of these specifically. So like somebody's at a high degree on their scale of confidence for some claim, and it doesn't even really matter what it is, but no one can prove them wrong. Does that give us more reason to doubt the claim or less reason to doubt the claim?
With inside that framework you're setting up, the answer would be yes. It gives you less reason. But this is a presupposing a frame to a large degree, because even the reductionist proposition you put that you could reduce this in and of itself, like I reject that. I reject that in the first place. But yes, in and of itself, having not been proven wrong doesn't mean you're more justified, because you haven't necessarily been tested yet. But even this doesn't say a lot. Just because you haven't been proven wrong yet doesn't necessarily say a lot about the quality of your belief either. So, yeah.
If somebody were believing in, we all agreed about the flat Earth claim, but we could pick like any claim that we all agree is false, whether it's mermaids or anything. Like you could pick anything that we all agree is false. But if somebody were using number 17 to be high on that scale of confidence about this false thing, but we had no way to show them that they were wrong, would they be ever able to would they be stuck at their number if they adhered to 17? And this will be my last question on it.
I think if they open their heart and listen to reality, there would still be ways short of being proven where they could learn a better truth. I think often if you believe in something without justification, and if you're ignoring evidence, if you're actually honest with yourself, you'll determine that you're aware of your motivated reasoning, or you actually legitimately have a mental health issue.
All right. And Justin, what do you think? And then we can move on to the last one.
Sorry, I don't know why. I find it hard to respond.
You don't need to say anything either.
I don't even get where you. I don't understand where you even get these questions. They're just so weird how they're written. Like,
well, these are all common reasons people give to believe in all sorts of things, and in a lot of the interviews that I've done over the years, people will tell me, no matter what the idea is, and this isn't just the claims that we've talked about today. This is like other claims that we haven't talked about. This is like all sorts of stuff. People have said that they're at a high degree of confidence for their idea because no one can prove them wrong. And so this is just asking whether or not you agree that that person.
There is something weak there. Very
could
weak.
a person, could a person be wrong and use this principle to be confident? And if so, should we ever rely on this principle to be confident ourselves? This is generally the question.
I guess it's like asking, is the lack of a counterexample positive evidence for something? Is that what you're saying? Is the lack or the absence of a counterexample positive evidence for something? And I don't think it is. It's not positive evidence for anything. And that'd be back to the difference between like a proposition P and its negation. Like there's something, because the lack of evidence has no positive content to it in a way, like it's hard to really, I don't know. It doesn't really tell you anything. So that's maybe one way maybe that's how I'd rephrase this for myself. Or I would try to persuade them that that's just not good enough. Like you have that belief, but you might as well have any other belief that hasn't been falsified so far. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought
really
that was
say
great.
That to you? I don't know.
Yeah, dude, they do.
Okay.
I thought what you said just now was awesome. I really connect with what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Thunderbirds did. Yeah, it's
and just to tie this in, because I think this is one of the most important points on the survey, especially when we combine it with number 9, which is what makes a test valid, is if a thing isn't the case, could we find ourselves ever in a scenario in which a thing isn't the case, though we believe it is, on the basis that there's no way to show it isn't there, and yet also hold to this idea that in order to test our ideas or be confident in them, they need to have this quality of being testable in a negative sense. Does that sorry, I'm not stringing my words together because I've been talking for like 2.5 hours now at this point. But I'm open to any questions about number 17 before we move on, because I think that 17 is one of the more important ones on here. And I can answer any question or attempt to.
The thing is that I would really want to hammer you guys on what you mean by justified, whereas I think this question, from your perspective, is, and I'm speaking partially to Justin here, I think these questions come from a context of talking to people who might not believe there's a role for evidence or consistency or logic, or who haven't necessarily thought out everything they believe as much as maybe they could, or perhaps also for people who aren't as often, like this way of thinking that's exhibited in this survey is for people who put a primacy on ability to explicate why you believe things, like that would be important, because part of the problem with this question too is you might not know the justifications for your belief, and you might not know how to evaluate the evidence for and against your belief, and it still could be a correct belief the entire time, and somebody who has a lot of verbal intelligence can come along and show you that you can't defend it. This is actually what happens in one of the Dostoevsky books that Peterson always talks about. But somebody with verbal intelligence can come along and prove that you're wrong, and you can't prove why you're right, and all of a sudden you no longer feel justified. So there's lots of situations where this isn't true, but there's a lot of people who just believe things without good reason, and then this applies to them. So I don't know what else to say.
Okay. All right. Last one, 18. The most important criteria for my beliefs is that they match reality. Or to rephrase this another way, and correct me if this isn't good rephrasing, the most important criteria for my beliefs is that they are true.
You got to change your answer if he says that, don't you, Justin?
Yeah, I just tweaked it a little. At least to the neutral while I think about it.
What do you guys think? If your beliefs happen to be false, would you want to know? Remember the box of truth question that we asked? I asked last week.
But true and match reality. Oh, geez, Louise.
Okay, I'm agreeing here. I'm more agreeable now. Yeah.
Okay.
I only didn't fully agree because match reality.
You think that's different than true? Like when I say it's raining outside, if it's raining outside, then my description matches.
Okay. Would you agree? Most important criteria for my beliefs is that they are capital T true. Okay. The second most important, like the closest I can get to being capital T true, is my personal assessment that there's small lowercase t true. And then my best way of determining.
Overthink it. Do you want to know whether, like, if you discovered that your beliefs, this is basically the bottom line. If you discovered that your beliefs were not true, would you want to know that they weren't?
Of course.
Or vice versa. Like if you discovered.
You asked that somewhere else though, didn't you?
Huh?
Didn't you ask that explicitly somewhere else though?
Last week. That was the box of truth. Imagine you have a box of truth. You can ask it anything. Is there anything you wouldn't ask the box? Is essentially another way to phrase it.
I find it is beneficial to find out when I'm wrong about something. That's the same.
Yeah, that was it's another way. It's beneficial to find out when I'm wrong. Yeah, 18 is just like both a positive and negative. Like, do you want to know true things and as few false things as possible? Mm-hmm. It sounds like your answer is yes.
Yeah, truth is good. They're the same thing.
Cool. Awesome. And then just to wrap up, what do you think about the survey in general? Is it a fair way to at least hash things out and understand concepts for words and the tools we use to determine things? Or what do you think? What is your opinion?
I off the top of my head, I feel like it's 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Because
some improvement.
I think it serves the purposes you intend to use it for well. I do feel like it kind of leads people into some traps to a certain extent. Like there's a certain amount of like, when did you stop beating your wife? About the phrasing in some spots, you know. So you're kind of screwed either way.
What was the moment that stood out to you the most like that? In the last almost 2.5 hours or whatever. What was the moment that you felt that way the most?
Which question?
Yeah, either what question or like what series of question or what moment, like help me understand. So because my goal is to not make you feel that way. If anything, what I want is for us to cordially lay out how our thought process works and what it would take for us to change our mind on things. And then for us to be comfortable enough to allow each other to change our minds and or provide reasons that I'm lacking so I can better understand. And if people don't feel that's my intent, then I need to get better at it.
Yeah.
So if there's, and feel free to, I'm just, don't beat me up too much, but like if there was a specific time you can recall in the last 2.5 hours in which you felt like the question was leading in a negative way or like pinned you in a position that made the conversation less honest or whatever, then I would, so that way I can know. I thought it went great. I thought you guys just described everything to my satisfaction. I mean, I felt like I understood some things better, and there were some times during the interview where I started to see like where you were coming from, and just was like, yeah, I don't feel like I need to push any further with questions. And it didn't bother me that we gave different answers to some of the statements. So long as we like generally understand like where each other are coming from and the intent behind these different things, and I I thought it was great, and I thought that I learned a lot from both of you. Do you have anything else to say about the survey, or anything about this method, or anything else?
It's hard to know when the question is like a, what's the word, like a normal question, and sometimes the question is just like a trick, like it's kind of a nonsense question, and you have to kind of detect if it's nonsense or not. Like some weird.
What was the trickiest? What was the trickiest like question today?
This word justify going around. I find that.
Yeah, we might need to replace that word with a different one. We kept trying to come up with a different word.
And beliefs. That's another thing.
The word justified and belief. It's not necessarily bad that you have those words, though.
We might not be able to get rid of belief. That one we might be stuck with that one.
Some thoughts should never be questioned. I don't know. I think the questions work well as jumping off points. I don't know how they betray or reveal your presuppositions, though. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a way. I don't know if there's a way to escape that, because that's kind of the whole point, right?
Generally, with SE, we don't use a survey, and honestly, it's better generally not to. I felt like the last time though that we talked, it was like 5 of us on a panel, and we went on for like 3 hours, and it kept regressing. We couldn't stay organized. I felt like this was a great way for us to stay organized, and then the next time we talk, we could reference these claims again about a higher power, about whether or not the election was stolen, whether or not the Earth is flat, and then the last one, which was what was that last one? There was a fourth one.
Vaccines cause autism.
Sorry,
I'm thinking of something else.
Well, the whole idea is we could then like apply our reasons and then see if any of our reasons validate the principles. But otherwise, yeah, it was great.
He's trying to create a structure to actually get traction in the conversation, Justin. Right?
No, that's good. I like that.
If we don't have touch points and questions and statements, then like we'll just talk in circles forever. There'll be no ability to catch ourselves, right? So
no, it's good. And it is, we did kind of retouch a lot of things from the 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, some of it. Like, soul. That was the last thing we talked about, was the soul. Before we go, do you guys want to give a new number for our soul? Or have you, given that the scale would be like 0 is all questions, and 100 is all confidence, what number would you attribute to a soul? Has the number changed at all, or would you give it the same number? Or just throw out a number that you feel now. You don't have to compare yourself to your past self.
I'll go for a 9 on this one. And nothing has persuaded me that there's no soul so far.
Okay.
But there's asymmetry here, right? It seems to me like to deny.
And you're at a 90. What got you to a 90
of existence? Well, that's just a number. I mean, that's just a strong confidence.
Yeah. What thing, if I deprived it from you, would drop you from a 90 to some much lower number?
I got to tell you, I don't know what I could think of. I don't know what challenge I could give you.
I'm going to go with 95 right now because it's experiential. It's the experiences I've had. It's the way reality has revealed itself to me. So I don't think anything it's unlikely anything you're propositionally going to articulate is going to jar that. It would have to be an experience. And
our personal experience is a reliable way. This was number 8 on the survey. Our personal experience is a reliable way to know whether or not something is true.
Sometimes.
I would put forward yes, because it's like, how do I put it forward? As you like interpreting statistics, right? Even if you could reduce something to the way they do with scientific papers, okay, and all the variables and the constructs that each have their own structural validity, all the math, delineating, like if you're not talking about something like physics, right? So even if you constructed a model of psychology with all your different variables and they're nicely defined and all the survey data and all the data points line up, it's like even being able to interpret that data set is something you're gonna have to come back to intuition. Like if there's a 50 variables laid out with 100 studies backing up each variable, like there's no clear way to interpret the data set. At some point, you have to use. This is Peter. Like, go listen to the first episode of the Jordan Peterson podcast.
Do you have a data set for a soul, like other than? So I'm hearing you say you have to interpret the data set, and I don't disagree with that.
Okay, the more you get into the abstract questions, like especially once you get to like very all-encompassing multi-purpose words that fudge like soul or God or beauty, it becomes harder and harder to ground those things in explicit data points. So much as like you're condensing so much information and so much interpretation into something such a finite yes or no question. So it's like that like when I think of soul, I think of like it's like the basis of what you think reality is. Like so like to really get in touch with what you really consider reality to be, the true nature of reality, it's like that's like it takes your whole life you're developing an opinion on that. Like you're trying to sum up like thousands of experiences and thousands of data points. So like I don't know what else to rely upon besides a feeling or an intuition.
If you couldn't rely on personal experiences or feelings at all, what would the number be?
I've never been autistic, so I wouldn't know. Like I'm not a robot. Like I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to turn myself.
I don't know is an honest answer. I don't have a problem with. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how to turn myself into a robot. It sounds like you're trying to turn me into a machine. I don't mean that in a negative way, but that just sounds like that sounds like how a machine looks at reality. Like, and I don't feel like I'm a machine.
Yeah, here's a joke. Here's a joke.
Uh-huh.
I don't believe humans have souls. Meaning, I say it with no life, totally like, I don't know if it's that obvious. Why, do you think, are there people who say like, yeah, there's no soul? Like, that's what I have trouble with that.
I think that the people that I've met who are lacking of belief in a soul typically aren't saying that they know that there isn't one. They're more like they're open to evidence when there is, generally, that I've seen. And that I'm describing kind of myself right now. Like on the claim whether there's a soul, I'm probably at a 2 or a 3. And that's only because of number 8, in which we all agreed that it's possible to be certain of something and yet still be mistaken about that thing. And unless I compare my experiences, my personal experiences, to real world evidence and have that be checked by other people, then I could be wrong and I wouldn't have any way of knowing. And it isn't to say that a 0 or a 2 on my scale means that I know it's not the case. It just means all I have are questions about this idea.
Okay.
And so I remain relatively agnostic to the idea. It could be the case. I don't really know. There could be, I'm sure you've heard the teapot thought experiment. There could be a teapot floating around Jupiter. If there were a teapot, why would I want to believe in it? Or how would I believe in it? I'd believe in it through observational evidence, probably. If it weren't there, though, could I know that it's not there? Could I really know that it's not there? I don't know. That's kind of my position on it.
Have you, if you can refrain from answering, I don't know. It's kind of a public.
Sure. I feel like.
Have you experimented with psychedelics at all? Have you ever been high on acid or high on mushrooms?
I have.
Did you feel the one at all, or
if anything, it was more evidence for me to be cautious of my own personal experience.
Okay, I guess
I could see things that weren't, I've hallucinated not even from drugs, just from like lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And I've seen things that make me call into question my own direct experience. And I know that under certain pressures and circumstances, I experience things that I cannot rely on, especially if I'm emotional about this thing, or if I desire a specific answer, I also trust myself a little less.
Okay, but have you ever like, so there's an exaggeration effect that happens during psychedelics, right? So like your pattern recognition goes all over the place, and you're going to start seeing patterns that aren't there. You're more likely to. But have you ever found an overlap of where a pattern gets highlighted in psychedelics, where it gets highlighted in science, where it gets highlighted in your own personal experience? Like, this is what Peterson talks about in his book Maps of Meaning. It's like using very disparate ways of very disparate epistemologies, in fact, and then when they converge, that's very interesting, right? That's the basic premise of what he thinks he's doing. So I would put forward that, like, when I personally, like, to probably my own experience, when my psychedelic experience, my personal experience, when what I'm seeing in science, and when I'm learning in Christianity, when all those things seem to be saying the same thing in a different language, I'm just like, whoa, that's pretty trippy, you know? And to me, so that's part of where intuition and feeling would come into a belief system, right? So like when I think of why I believe in souls for myself, I can think of like, well, it fits with it fits with Christianity. It fits with some personal intuitions I have. It fits.
What would make the number drop? Is there something?
Well, it depends. Like for me personally, it's like I could be delusional, but many of my beliefs are conciliatory with other belief systems in the way I just described. So
okay,
it's like,
so you'd have to have a different belief called into question for this belief to go down.
well, it's like there's very few beliefs I hold that are just little silos, because I don't reach my conclusions based on like one little rational pie of information conclusion.
Gotcha.
Which
belief, if you were to change, would change this one the most? Which belief? Because I'm hearing you say that they're not reliant on, like,
I'd have to
in a
lose
cloud of beliefs.
I'd have to lose my faith in God. But that's it. But see, but there's so many data points of what's happened to me in the past. It's far beyond propositional knowledge at this point. In fact, the big reason I started believing in God personally was because my propositional knowledge that I was building through rational thought and my experiential knowledge they were getting closer and closer and closer. And when they overlapped, I felt a multi-hour religious experience when they kind of collided. So it's very hard for me to have that experience, have all these things correlate, come to a conclusion, act that conclusion out, have reality get better in a way that's consistent with that belief, and then all of a sudden that's where I'm at now. And then all of a sudden, very unlikely you could say one thing or pop up with one data point and be like, oh, all your other data points, boom, recast, paradigm shift. Like, what I mean? Like that's very hard, in my particular example, right? So
you'd have to change your belief in God.
Well,
that's what I'm hearing.
No, it's okay. This is why the framing is so important. If your beliefs are internally consistent, it's like you can't change one belief without changing many. Like, because if you actually have a coherent view of reality, it's like you can't just change one part of it without tugging at all the other strings, right? So it's not just like you can't just walk in and go, yeah, this one data point you have is wrong. That means you have a very weak ontology in the first place. If you could have, if 99 of your beliefs could remain completely true and one could be proven completely false, you must have a very ad hoc way of building your reality, or you're very agnostically minded, right? I find a lot of people who like evidence-based ways of reasoning are tend to be very ad hoc thinkers, where they don't, it's not, anyways.
Well, I feel like we've gone on for 3 hours. So this has been a great talk, though. I think it's time to probably cut it for now. But I had a fun time. And maybe what we can do is, if there is a next time, we can keep a record of these, or at least just keep these points in mind on the survey. And I'd like to know what would move us on the scale. And this is probably why street epistemologists are so interested in a higher power, because you aren't the first person I've ever met who said that some tangential belief was reliant on the higher power belief. And it's actually been a belief of mine that many of our beliefs are reliant or dependent on a higher power claim, which is why I always find it so fascinating to talk about. But hey, guys, it's been a great, super awesome conversation. You've really
thank you, Nathan,
with me the whole time, and thank you, Reed, for working the magic in the background. And,
thank you, Reed.
Let's pick it up again at a later day. Thanks, Reed.